to El Salvador as those kids raid Social Security against court orders. Everything's on fire everywhere all at once. Will our democracy and rule of law hold, or is it already gone, and do you care?
I'm Marjorie Egan, and then live and in person is legendary documentarians Ken Burns and Sarah Botstein, hard at work on a new project about the American Revolution 250 years ago this week with the Battle of Lexington and Concord. Their 6-part, 12-hour docuseries coming this fall is The American Revolution. We'll hear the lessons for today next on the first hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Lawyers for the Trump administration are due back in a federal courthouse in Maryland today. The administration says it cannot bring back an immigrant who was wrongfully deported from Maryland to El Salvador. NPR's Jimena Bustillo reports that's despite several federal court orders.
Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia was deported by mistake to El Salvador last month. A Maryland judge ordered the Trump administration to take steps to facilitate his return, a decision later supported by all 9 Supreme Court justices. But President Trump and Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele both said they have no plans to return him. A federal judge is expected to raise more questions today about whether the administration is doing enough to, quote, facilitate Abrego Garcia's return. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News, Washington.
Trump also talked to the Salvadoran president yesterday about the possibility of deporting American criminals to El Salvador. The Salvadoran president says that he has, quote, room. The Trump administration has pulled more than $2 billion of federal funding from Harvard University. Harvard has refused to comply with several Trump administration demands. Some of these include getting rid of all DEI programs and tracking students who, quote, support terrorism or anti-Semitism. Harvard says no government, no matter which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach or whom they can admit or hire. NPR's Janaki Mehta reports Harvard says it will lose funding for programs that benefit all Americans.
Harvard actually updated the homepage of its website to reflect how federal dollars support research they do. They list research on treatments for several forms of cancer, heart disease, organs and transplantation. And they say federal funding is the university's largest source of support for what Harvard calls cutting-edge, groundbreaking research.
NPR's Janaki Mehta reporting. The president is commenting on the Harvard issue. Writing online, President Trump suggested that Harvard University should lose its tax-exempt status and be treated as a political entity. Trump says that is for, quote, pushing political, ideological, and terrorist-inspired supporting sickness. Hamas says it's considering a new proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza. Mediators say they're optimistic about reaching a deal within a few weeks. NPR's Daniel Estrin has more from Tel Aviv.
An Egyptian official involved in mediating the ceasefire talks says Israel is proposing a month-and-a-half ceasefire in Gaza, during which Hamas would release about half of the hostages who are still alive, and Israel would release more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. The Egyptian mediator, who is not authorized to speak publicly, tells NPR Israel is willing to negotiate a permanent end of the war, but demands Hamas disarm, which some Hamas officials say is not up for negotiation. Hamas, in a statement, said it is considering the ceasefire proposal. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. As we've been hearing, Trump administration says it'll freeze more than $2 billion in research funds to Harvard University. This comes after the school said it would not comply with a list of demands as a condition for continued federal funding. In making the announcement, Harvard President Alan Garber describes the demands as unreasonable, which include auditing the viewpoints of academic programs and screening international students for supporting terrorism and anti-Semitism. Still, though, Boston University professor of law Jonathan Feingold says Harvard is on firm legal ground in rebuffing the Trump administration.
But what I would most like to see from Harvard is not to stop here, but to announce a much broader alliance with universities across the country that are speaking in unison, say that we are going to protect each other from these unlawful and anti-democratic attacks.
The Trump administration had previously said some $9 billion in federal funding to Harvard was at risk if the school did not comply. Meanwhile, Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey also supports the President Alan Garber's refusal to comply with the Trump administration's demands. In a statement to the Crimson, Healey wrote, quote, "I join others around the country in extending congratulations and gratitude to Harvard University, President Garber, and the corporation for their leadership and standing up for education and freedom by standing against the Trump administration's brazen attempt to bully schools and weaponize the U.S. Department of Justice," unquote. Healey has been an outspoken critic for the White House's funding cuts to universities and public health grants, as well as the dismantling of the Department of Education. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
Okay, that's our new music. I'm getting used to it still. You are listening to Boston Public Radio, same show. Jim Brady, Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We have a very special treat today. At 11:30, we're going to be joined by legendary documentary filmmaker Ken Burns and Sarah Botstein. They've got this great new documentary coming out soon about the American Revolution. The timing is very good for the 250th
anniversary,
think so? Jim. Yeah. We're going to be back here tomorrow with Christopher Kimball, who's got this great new cookbook, Italian Food. Hello, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. So while we were on the air yesterday talking to Khalil Gibran Muhammad, Harvard President Alan Garber responded to the Trump administration's long list of extraordinary demands, including dramatic hiring and international admissions reforms that would align the university with Trump's agenda, a massive government overreach into a private institution of learning. Quote, "The university will not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights," Garber wrote to the campus. "This matters. The world's richest and most powerful university is finally vowing to resist the Trump administration, while so many others of wealth and stature have already capitulated." In response, as you just heard on the national NPR news, Trump is freezing a couple of $1 billion in funding and threatening to take away Harvard's tax-exempt status. This comes on the heels of yet another Oval Office publicity stunt. Yesterday, with El Salvador president and self-described cool dictator Bukele, where he and Trump smirked as they flouted democratic norms and defied court orders, including from the Supreme Court of the United States, to return a man wrongfully sent to a Salvadorian mega prison. Lines are open at 877-301-8970. In November, voters were asked about whether democracy mattered to them. Just 12% of Trump voters said that was their top issue, compared to 34% of voters overall. That was according to an NBC News exit poll. Should we care more about our system of government, the rule of law, the Constitution, or is it so broken that a plurality of Americans are willing to cede their own power for the sake of change, regardless of who's harmed along the way? The number is 877-301-8970. That's our number.
Well, I tell you, I'm with Shirley Young. She starts her column today saying that collective sigh of relief you heard around Greater Boston on Monday afternoon was all about Harvard finally standing up, because it was in some question or doubt that they would stand up. So they pushed out the guy or the woman, I don't know who it was in charge of their Middle Eastern Studies department. Yeah. They acquiesced on that. I thought they might acquiesce altogether, and I'm really glad.
Well, I mean, in fairness, we were talking about how they had. I mean, that BS neutrality policy, no support for Khalil Gibran Muhammad when he was targeted by a House Republican-chaired committee, all these kinds of things. So this was surprising, I should say.
And I think, as she says, and many other people have said, I think this will give, courage is contagious, and this will give other universities to stand up as well. And, I know $2 billion is a lot of money, but an awful lot of rich people come out of Harvard University. Maybe the alums can step up to the plate and throw.
What if it's $9
Mark
billion?
Zuckerberg.
What if it's $9 billion tomorrow?
Well, again, if you've got a $50+ billion endowment, and I know some of that money is restricted, but as Larry Summers, a former president of Harvard, said, in an emergency like this, you maybe can find ways to get around that spending. But I do think this is a perfect time. I mean, look at who went to Harvard. but is it, isn't Zuckerberg one of the richest people in the world?
He is.
Yeah, maybe. Of course, he doesn't want to antagonize the president because of that big lawsuit going about the antitrust lawsuit. But
I don't think, by the way, I don't have any idea. I don't think Garber did a calculation about their finances. I think he was boxed in. I mean, in light of the fact that he's been silent until yesterday about everything, I think all of the pressure on him from former president, remember Larry Summers' piece in the Globe? If Harvard can't stand up to Trump, who can?
We talked to Khalil Mohammed yesterday from Princeton, who was at Harvard. He's still part-time at Harvard, but he taught about African-American history and studies. He's at Princeton now, where the president has stood up. But he was saying he didn't think maybe Garber was the man for the moment. And, you may like Larry Summers, you may not like Larry Summers, but I would say he's a little bit more pugnacious. Say, President, I think he would have been quicker to the draw on this one. The number is 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970.
Can I just say something? I don't want to get lost purely in Harvard. While it's great news that he has stood up, and we hope he continues to stand up, this Garcia thing in the White House yesterday was grotesque. That's one thing.
They were all lying there, by the way.
What?
Pam Bondi was lying about the history of Garcia. What she said about him wasn't true. Rubio was lying about. They just all sit around and they lie. And the president of El Salvador, my God, he's sort of a disgraceful character, I think.
Well, listen to this. This is a little sound that's there where you hear them talking, Bukele and Trump, about deporting homegrown criminals to El Salvador. The clip was captured by Aaron Rupar, a journalist, before the White House press pool entered. Just listen to Trump and Bukele.
Yeah, I said homegrowns are next. The homegrowns built. You got to build about 5 more places. Yeah, that's fair. All right. It's not big enough. No, yeah, come on.
Do you believe that's a subject of laughter in the Oval Office? What he's saying, if you couldn't hear that, Trump says, I said homegrowns are next, meaning United States citizens.
United States
as
citizens
he said,
who commit crimes.
Could be sent there. The homegrowns, you've got to build about 5 more places. Bukele says, yeah, and laughs. And then Trump says, it's not big enough. I know people care about the economy, and you should. I know a lot of people are deeply concerned about undocumented workers in this country. But yesterday was other than the Harvard standing up moment, was a really frightening day.
Well,
and can I say, I want to say one more thing.
Okay.
Their position about Garcia not only flouts what their own lawyer said in court, that he was mistakenly, he had done nothing. He was mistakenly deported, but it flies in the face of a ruling unanimous. That means including Alito and Clarence Thomas.
Well, they lied
about the Supreme Court that said that the president and the administration are required to facilitate the return of Garcia. And they basically said, we're not going to facilitate the return in violation of the court order.
They lied about that, too. Stephen Miller said they got a unanimous ruling from the Supreme Court, and it was fine what they were doing. But anyway, I wanted to point out in terms of I think a lot of us had a little chill go down our spine when we heard the president talking about deporting American citizens who been convicted of crimes to El Salvador. Well, Jamie Raskin, he's a man with words. He's a Democrat from Maryland, a congressman. He said, well, Donald Trump is a convicted criminal. Can he be deported? He says a criminal conviction is not a license to destroy the rights and dignity of a person. If anyone should know that and understand that, it should be, of course, Donald Trump. But here's the other thing he said at the end, which I think also is very chilling for us to think about. How they came for the Jewish person, and I wasn't Jewish, so I didn't worry. Then they came for the gypsies, and I wasn't a gypsy, I didn't worry. Well, here's what Raskin said. Everybody can see where this is going. First, Trump violates the rights of undocumented people. Then he violates the rights of documented legal residents. Then he attacks the rights of citizens. So this is a sliding scale of constitutional injury, and Trump is seeing how far he can go before he's stopped. I
couldn't agree more.
Chilling. And that's one of the wonderful things about Harvard is that they have said they're not going to let him go any further. We got a text from John in Ashland who says, I'm a staff member of Harvard Medical School. I'm so happy Harvard is fighting. My livelihood depends on research funding, but we have to do what is right.
Good for him. 877-301-8970. Where do you want to start, Marjorie?
Let's go to Rama in the car. Thank you for calling.
Welcome. Hi.
Oh, man. man, woman. Oh, hi, Margaret. Hey, good
Hi.
Hi, Jim. Good morning.
Morning to you.
I have had to moderate listening to NPR for obvious reasons. I love you all. I love NPR. Oh, man. This is so sad and dangerous and disturbing. We're praising Harvard for doing such a basic, low bar thing. I'm glad they're doing it. I'm thankful for them. I sent them an email to the president about 3 weeks ago asking them to do so, as I'm sure many, many, many other people have. But it's so sad that we've got to praise them for doing something so basic, but we have to. Thank you for keeping it on the front burner. Can I share one thing that I've been doing to help myself feel better?
Yep.
I go to open mics a lot, and sometimes I sing, and I've been opening up my open mics with what could be our 51st state's national anthem. Oh, Canada.
Very nice.
Hey, Rama, thank you as always for your call. We appreciate it.
Very nice.
877-301-8970. I have to say, while there's been a lot of pressure on Garber, and I'm not taking away from the fact that he did what he did, the fact that the professors at the school, close to 800 of them had signed a letter to him about a week or so ago. And the fact that the American Association of University Professors at Harvard, they filed suit against Trump the day before, I think put him in a box. And I think that's why he got where he got. And I'm glad he is there. 877-301-8970. Do you think people give a damn when they're worried about their 401k?
Yes.
They're worried about the price of groceries. Do you think they care about the fact it is? Let me be clear here. I occasionally engage in hyperbole, not here. Clearly, Donald Trump et al., all of his boys and girls, are violating an order from the Supreme Court of the United States.
That's
While
right.
his lawyers always say in court, we will comply with a court order, they are in clear violation of a directive from the Supreme Court of the United States, 9-0 on what they had to do around Abrego Garcia. And there seems to be not a ripple. I mean, I hope people care. Do you?
I think people care about the fact that the whole country seems to be going down the chutes in less than, how long has he been the president for? Like 80 days?
Something
like that.
Yep.
And part of it is this, and obviously part of it is economics. I mean, I heard from my, always advertise my favorite podcast for the New York Times, The Daily, and I'm biased, my daughter works there, she has nothing to do with the podcast though, but in any case, they had a businesswoman on yesterday who's made a business for herself by selling this baby equipment. It's some kind of mat that keeps her from dropping kids on the floor. She's done it all by herself, and of course, where does she have everything made? In China. And she talked about how this has been so sudden and so fast, it's given her no time to adjust. Maybe she could have done with a 20% tariff, maybe she could have done with a 40% tariff, but now what is it, 145% tariff?
Out of China.
So, yes. So basically, she said what this will do is not only will she lose her business, but she will lose her home, because her business is what pays for her home. There is just no way for a business like hers.
Short-term pain.
But my point is, she's not the only one. A small business administration that helps people in these situations has just been gutted by the Trump administration and DOE. So I think when people's businesses get shut down, in addition to a normal person, and I exclude Stephen Miller and Donald Trump from the normal person, the cruelty of this for this man, when it's so blatantly horrible. 300 and some people have died in those prisons since 2022. That's a lot of deaths in a prison.
By the way, John in Somerset said they got Kristi Noem back from El Salvador. They can get Garcia back too. I don't know if you remember, Kristi Noem with her $50,000 Rolex was standing in front of one of these cells with 80 to 100 men, and it really is crass as, well, typically crass. Peggy in Cambridge, you're on Boston Public Radio. Thanks so much for your call. Hi.
Hi, thank you. I'm living in Cambridge.
Yeah.
But I did go to University of Cincinnati and worked at University of Michigan.
Yeah.
And they are one of the 60 universities that are included in this letter from Trump. And my suggestion is that every participant of the hands-off rally should give $1, $5 to their favorite university and let them know that they support them against Trump.
You know that University of Michigan has already dropped their DEI program that they were holding out as the model for America. So one of America's premier public university systems is already amongst the capitulators, Peggy. You know that, right?
I was afraid of that, yes. But I also worked at the medical school there, and I plan to connect with them, and I'm hoping because of the cancer research cut that they will stand firm, at least in that aspect.
Peggy, thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
I just
Thanks.
want to mention something very important. I mentioned how Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, Law Enforcement Chief of the United States of America, lied repeatedly yesterday in that press conference. John in Westford apparently fell for her lies because he's texting to say Garcia was proven in court as a member of at the gang MS-13 and an illegal alien. That is a lie, and she told it. He has never been charged, let alone convicted of being a member of the gang. This is according to the New York Times, which is a fact-based newspaper. During his deportation proceedings, some evidence was introduced that he belonged to MS-13. Judges decided it was not enough to keep him in custody while the matter was resolved, but other judges have found the same evidence to be lacking. So he has not been associated with this gang.
Well, he doesn't even have to believe the failing New York Times, as Trump calls it. The lawyer for the Justice Department
said the same thing.
Court says he was deported in error. What happened to that lawyer? Suspended by Pam Bondi after 15 years of service.
Pam Bondi's on Fox News. The right-wing echo chamber of lies is very powerful, and people like John from Westford believe it.
Okay, so do you think, before we get back to the calls, do you think the average American cares that the Supreme Court said that Trump et al. Had to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia, and yesterday he and Bukele made clear they have no intention of complying with that directive? Do you think the average person cares at all? I don't, unfortunately.
I think it depends. I think if you're someone who believes these lies, then maybe you don't care.
The average person who doesn't believe these lies.
Yes, I do.
I think
the average person who doesn't believe these lies does not think it's right to put a man who's not been found guilty of a crime in the United States of America in a place where he may be dead soon.
Ellen in Westport, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you so much for calling. Hi.
Well, hello, Jim and Marjorie. How are you?
Hello, Ellen. Hello.
It's good to hear from you.
You too.
I've been trying for weeks.
Good. I'm
but
glad you got through.
anyways, what I have to say is, Marjorie, kudos to you for saying that this action by Harvard University will motivate other people.
I hope
think
so.
These colleges, every single college in Massachusetts and throughout the 50 states, should get together and write letters like crazy. And maybe they need to get together and go to Washington and protest like everyone else.
Ellen, can I tell you something here? We should celebrate the few university presidents who have actually publicly done the right thing. There are a bunch in our region. The president of Brown, the president of Wesleyan, the president of Mount Holyoke. And so we actually have a decent amount to be proud of here. And Garber, who you could have found only on a milk carton until yesterday, has finally done an important and correct thing. Ellen, thank you much for the call. We appreciate it.
You know, Texter asked a great question. What is the consequence for the president not following Supreme Court orders? As far as I can see, nothing.
Well,
we talked about
potentially
this
contempt
yesterday
charges,
with Nancy Gertner, and that's what she said, contempt charges. But you wonder, will those charges be followed in this atmosphere?
Will they happen?
Yeah. Is somebody going to hold Pam Bondi in contempt of court?
Well, there seems to be the judge, whose name I forget for the moment, who is required that there be a report every single day by 5 p.m. about what the status of the efforts to, quote, facilitate the return of Garcia are, seems to be unhappy about the fact that the only thing that the Justice Department lawyers have told her is that, yes, he is being held in this prison in El Salvador. So I think there's a pretty good chance that there may be. But the question is that a serious enough penalty for Trump and his friends to care about the Constitution? We have to take a break.
We have to take a break. But we're talking about Harvard University, better late than never, standing up and saying they are not going to bend their knees to accommodate the rather ridiculous requests. They basically want to run the university. That's what Donald Trump wants to do. We're happy about that, or at least some of us are happy about that. And what do you think about this father of three with no conviction against him being held in a prison that he may never get out of alive in another country? 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/news.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, the 1965 Freedom Rally. 60 years ago, Martin Luther King Jr. led the march from Roxbury to Boston Common, protesting racial imbalance in housing and schools. Amari Parrish Jeffries, president and CEO of Embrace Boston, joins us to preview a rally commemorating the 60th anniversary of this fight for social justice. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Newport Mansions, presenting 11 historic properties and landscapes, including 7 National Historic Landmarks, tracing America's architectural development from the colonial era through the Gilded Age. Tickets at newportmansions.org. And the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism, commemorating 250 years of history, independence, and innovation since the American Revolution. Learn more at massachusetts250.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. That is the new music. I feel like we're on the wrong show, but apparently we're not. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The governor will be with us for an hour on April 25th here at the library. In about 5 minutes, Ken Burns and Sarah Botstein from their new documentary, The American Revolution, will join us. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the Trump administration's assault on democratic institutions, lack of concern about the rule of law, lack of concern about directives from the Supreme Court of the United States, but in a flicker of hope, Alan Garber over there at Harvard standing up to the Trump administration and saying, we will not play your game. 877-301-8870. Jennifer in Boston, welcome to the show. Hi.
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 Thanks for taking my call.
Pleasure.
I think most people, I don't know anybody who isn't sickened by what's going on. And I call the White House daily to comment. I don't know that it ever goes anywhere, but I belong to the ACLU and to Southern Poverty Law Center.
Wow.
It's just so frustrating because I don't know what else to do. You know, our hands are sort of tied until John Roberts decides to do something. I feel like.
Well, except that, Jennifer, I'd say your hands are tied longer than that. John Roberts and all 8 of his colleagues decided to do something about Abrego Garcia. They did it unanimously, and the president of El Salvador and the president of the United States yesterday made clear they don't give a damn what the Supreme Court says. So even when Roberts is on the right side, what's that?
It was sickening to watch.
It was sickening. It was sickening to watch. Stephen Miller seeming to virtually run the whole thing with 2 presidents there. Jennifer, thank you for your call.
I know, he seems like a nice guy, don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you like to hang out with him and have a beer, as the proverbial question goes? I don't know. I don't think so. Here's Rose in Plymouth. I'm so upset this is happening to this man, Abrego Garcia, and his family's going through this. My fear is he may no longer be alive or be in such bad shape that if he was returned to the United States, there would be no hiding it. But as long as he stays in El Salvador, Trump and his corrupt administration can hide it. I'm heartened. I just saw some Democratic lawmakers going down to El Salvador to fight for his release. I didn't even hear about that. Did
I don't
you?
know. Well, also, Khalil and Ozturk are still in federal prisons in Louisiana as their cases very slowly wind their way through the courts.
And she reported on how she'd had several asthma attacks and was unable to get help with those, and that they have they're in these freezing cold floors with.
You're talking about Ozturk.
Yeah.
That's the Tufts woman for those who don't.
So
know.
the ice, you can't get a blanket if you're in ice detention that warms you at night.
Also, do you know his Khalil's wife had that baby? She was 8.5 months pregnant when. Again, that justice doesn't move very quickly. Others does. Eric in Pittsburgh, I think. Hello.
Hey, Fitchburg.
Oh, Fitchburg. It's a little closer.
Yeah.
Hi. Hey there, Eric. What's up?
Yeah, a little bit.
Sorry.
Yeah, my GPS makes the same mistake all the time.
Welcome. What's up?
Yeah. Hey, Jim, Marjorie. Jim, I got to thank you. You've been arguing the point. That's the whole reason I'm calling. I can't understand why this is not the most all-consuming story right now, all over every single news. Nothing else is more important to cover right now, and everything I'm reading seems to be written by people who haven't even seen the footage. Like, they're so timid about this massive crisis.
Which one? Which one are you talking about?
They've not only defied a 9-0 Supreme Court decision, they've rewritten it. Their argument is that it was a 9-0 in their favor. They've just decided that.
And by the way, just so that people...
There's such timid coverage about this.
Just so that people, I'm so glad to hear you say that, Eric, because obviously we do agree. The thing that Miller is talking about, where he's also being disingenuous, is the decision around the Alien Enemies Act,
right,
where he is saying, I think his tweet was something like one of the biggest victories for a president in history. In fact, it wasn't. While the Supreme Court said you could use it, it said that there had to be notice and some level of due process for people who they proposed to deport under the Alien Enemies Act. And most legal experts, including Judge Gertner, who was with us yesterday or the day before, I think would suggest at best it was a pretty significant defeat for the administration. But Eric, I'm glad you're on the same page, and thank you kindly for the call. We appreciate it.
Well, you know, remember they lied about the Mueller report. That was very early on.
That was Barr.
That was Attorney General Barr, right? Another lying Attorney General, because the Mueller report found, I think it was 10 or 12 instances of obstruction of justice, and which he could have indicted the president for, but he ceded being a follow the rules kind of guy. Unfortunately, I wish he weren't so carefully following the rules that the Justice Department was not going to indict a sitting president, but Barr lied about that and made it seem like it was a victory. So this has been going on the whole time. It's just much more scary now.
So if you have a choice continuing this conversation, as important as it is, you're talking to Ken Burns and Sarah Botstein, which would you prefer to do?
I would much prefer to talk to Ken Burns and Sarah Botstein.
I figured you would, so why don't we do that?
Okay, we are moving on. We're all having nervous breakdowns here. We're coming up, we're going to talk to filmmakers Ken Burns and Sarah Botstein in person right here at the library, talk about their multi-part documentary on the American Revolution. Those were the days, Jim. All about our nation's history, rejecting the notion of a king who says, just trust me. Feels relevant to the conversation we just had. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Bhutan is planning a new megacity to rev up its economy, but Bhutan also wants to uphold its environmental stewardship, so it's reinventing what a big city can look like.
On one hand, it's going to feel like almost ancient, and on the other hand, incredibly futuristic.
Bhutan's Mindfulness City, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And MIT Federal Credit Union, with memberships open to the general public, offering share certificates and certificates for retirement to help members reach their savings goals. Membership info at mitfcu.org, federally insured by NCUA. And Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty believes progress happens when people feel secure and exists to help people embrace today and pursue tomorrow. Learn more at libertymutual.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Bradley live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow and Friday. 250 years ago this week, a bunch of colonies united in rebellion seeking independence from an unjust monarchy, a rejection of tyrants' rule for a chance to create something entirely their own. So here we are, 250 years later, as an American administration attempts to delete certain huge slices of our history, while others work to deepen and expand our understanding of who we are. Two of them are joining us now, award-winning documentarians, Ken Burns and Sarah Botstein, who this fall will release an opus of American history, a 12-hour, 6-part series titled The American Revolution. They're at a sold-out GBH event tomorrow with the Boston Symphony Orchestra at Symphony Hall, featuring musical performances, selections from the documentary, and more. In fact, it's all sold out, so I don't know what the point is. But more info, they're going to be here for days doing wonderful things in our community. More information is available at gbh.org/events. Ken and Sarah, it's great to see you both. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marjorie.
Well, I read, Sarah, where you guys didn't plan to necessarily have this coincide with the beginning of the war. It's coming out in the fall. But tell us how this came about. How long have you guys been working on this? Do you want to?
Well, we were working on our Vietnam series, and in December of 2015, which is a few thousand years ago, we were about to lock that series that wouldn't be broadcast till the fall of 2017, and I just said, we're doing the Revolution next. And so we're well past 9 years. When it's broadcast on November 16th, or started to broadcast and released it will be very close to 10 years that we've been struggling to sort of come to terms with this. And I know you need a kind of sorbet course talking about all the contemporary stuff, but this is about monarchs and the rebellion against them. It's about a failed invasion of Canada. It's arguments about inoculation of troops during the war. And it's about who we are, essentially, as a people. And it is not yet colonies. They're all grumbling, but nobody's grumbling louder than Massachusetts. And as you know, on late on the 18th of April, British troops are sent across to the Cambridge marshes to find two leaders, Hancock and Adams, and find the guns that have been stored in Lexington and Concord. And the next morning, the 19th of April, the shot heard around the world. You know, we have, and Marjorie and I were just talking about this, we've said that human nature doesn't change. The Bible, Ecclesiastes, says there's nothing new under the sun. There is actually a moment when there's something new under the sun, and that begins on April 19th, 1775, goes through July 4th, 1776, complete to the end of the Revolution, which was for the first time in history, people would not be subjects, but this new thing called citizens that was going to require a lot of vigilance and attention and lifelong learning. That's what the pursuit of happiness is. There's no argument. It's not about objects in a marketplace of things. It's about lifelong learning in a marketplace of ideas.
Well, you know what else is new under the sun? Most of your films. I mean, I go into almost all your films thinking I actually may understand this topic and know a lot about it, and that disappears in about a nanosecond.
Us too, as we're working on it. So we're not telling you what you should know. We're sharing with you this discovery.
You know, Sarah, we talk a lot on the show, as we just were a few minutes ago, about how we're in a fact-free, anti-fact, alternative fact environment. You've done a lot of work together in different times. Do you have to construct a film like this differently than you might have had you made it 10 years ago because of this fact-averse world?
Our process actually stays remarkably the same. Doesn't matter if we're making a film about Ernest Hemingway, the Vietnam War, the American Revolution, the American Buffalo. Our sort of way of approaching a topic is the same, and the way we march through a history is both chronological and fact-based. And we leave the interpretation of those facts to the characters in the film, whether they're scholars or writers or archival characters. We're not overlaying our interpretation of that history. We're trying to literally walk a viewer through a topic, let them have all the information that they can, make it hopefully beautiful and interesting and moving and funny sometimes. But we want people to have the information to come up with their own questions and their own conclusions.
So you don't say the audience is a very different kind of audience than it was through the prior 40 films or whatever?
No, it's really important, as Sarah is exactly right, to sort of keep our heads down, focus on conquering the story, which is, of course, in this case, huge. It's obstructed by myth and the sort of barnacles of sentimentality that have encrusted among the bold-faced figures like Washington and Jefferson and others. There's hundreds, literally hundreds of new characters to introduce you to, from a 14-year-old fifer in Boston named John Greenwood, who joins in the aftermath of Lexington and Concord, and a 16-year-old gal in Yorktown. All of these have to be brought to life. They have to be balanced. The story has to... We've been doing this long enough that we know that when we lift our heads up, it's going to rhyme with the present. But that's been the case of every film, from the first one on Brooklyn Bridge, which had, corrupt New York politicians. Right. I mean...
That's because human nature doesn't change, Jim.
Thank you,
Why are you talking to me?
He's pointing that out.
Okay.
But, I was wondering when I was reading about this, how you have the young man and the young woman you just talked about, and Irish soldiers and French fighters and stuff, and African Americans and Native Americans. How do you... I'm not a historian, obviously. How do you find this stuff? Is this in some book up in Concord and Lexington?
Sometimes.
Because...
They're laughing at us, Marjorie.
There weren't books written about these people, I assume. So where do you get the information?
Every character and every image and every story has a different way that we get to it. But we do a lot of really old-fashioned research. We sift through libraries. We go to historical societies. We talk to people who have specialized in the subject. one little crumb leads to another.
Isn't that thrilling every
and it's
time
so
you have
exciting.
one? Discover one of those crumbs.
Oh, it's the best part of our job.
So we have advisors, writers, and scholars, as Sarah said, who've spent their lifetime doing this. And at one point, more than a year ago, they said, you've got lots of loyalists, and we're kind of agnostic. We understand what a loyalist would be. The Britain has delivered this prosperity. It's got the greatest form of government so far ever invented, this constitutional monarchy. Why do you want to upset the apple cart? They'd be called conservatives of the day. But we have them spread out throughout the film where we're following lots of patriots through several episodes. So we decided to follow a loyalist all the way through. But it's a loyalist who, in the Battle of Bennington, which is a British loss, kills his best friend growing up from New Haven.
Oh.
And that tells you what this is. This is a civil war. This is not, our Civil War was actually a sectional war, North against South, South against North. This is a civil war in which in any community, maybe in any family, we detail, and we'll be showing a clip about Henry Knox, who's this Boston bookseller who brings cannon all the way from Ticonderoga that sets up in top of the Dorchester Heights, and the British suddenly go, we could keep these peasants at bay, these rebels at bay, but we can't. Now that they have cannon, we're out of here, and they depart to Nova Scotia. But you begin to find out that Henry Knox's young wife has lost her father, her mother, her brothers, and her sisters, who all remain loyalists, and she evacuates Boston to be with her husband. This is going on in every family, in every community, in every colony, in every new state, all up and down. And that's what I don't think we fully appreciated, how violent it is, how much we were born in violence, and how much this is the story of human nature.
Sarah, you want to add something
No,
to this?
those stories come to us as we're making the film. So the Henry Knox trip is a pretty well-known story of the American Revolution. People know something about the Revolution. They've maybe heard of Henry Knox and that he got these cannons down. But they don't know anything about his wife. They don't know anything about his wife's family, or that there's correspondence between them that will make every wife and mother, brother, sister, father cry, because the stakes were so high and they risked everything, and it was an extraordinary time here.
That's the question. What would you do?
Right.
As we think about 250, and this town has to confront 250, we are already done with the massacre and with the Tea Party, and now moving on, and then to Bunker Hill in June and beyond that. What would you have done? Would you have been willing to give your life for an idea that was untested in all of human history? Would you be able to kill someone else in the defense of that idea? These are the
with
kind
the
of
odds
choices
of winning quite small.
are zero at the beginning. You're going up against the greatest navy on earth, the most far-flung empire on earth, and you're going to win?
Well, keeping with the human nature never changes theme, I wonder if you can discern any difference between the people who remain loyalists, if it wasn't just about money or their property or something, and people that were willing to take this leap. Because you think about that in terms of the resistance in World War II, or even in a less lethal way, we hope, today, Is there a difference?
There's huge differences, and there's also varieties of reasons why people are committing. Sometimes if you feel the overreach of this far-flung government that is not extending you the rights, they're now telling you can't cross into Indian country and take whatever land you want because they can't defend you. They want to impose taxes on you without you having a voice in the parliament to decide on those taxes, because they're Treasury is empty and they feel the colonists should pay for their defense, all pretty understandable stuff. But what happens is that this argument between British citizens about rights suddenly grows and evolves and migrates over to natural rights, right? All of a sudden, it's no longer my right as a British citizen is not being honored. It's that suddenly there are natural rights that we all share. And so you can have a slave owner like Thomas Jefferson say, we hold these truths to be self-evident. There is nothing self-evident about these truths that he's about to say, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. And so you go, all of a sudden the cat was out of the bag, and people are hearing this. People on the margins, the Declaration of Independence, Maggie Blackhawk, a legal scholar in the film, said, are deeply significant, is deeply significant, even though they know that it means just white men of property at the beginning. It's deeply significant to the people on the margins, Native Americans, women, black, enslaved and free in the colonies.
The idea still inspires, and she says everyone can push those levers to make the country more true on those foundational promises. And I think it's important to also recognize how the war changed from its seeds here to the end of the war. It moved geographically. The colonies were not the same. They were not united. It was, to your point earlier, very unlikely that we were going to win. And so I think the tensions and the pieces of the war that we don't learn in elementary school, think about in terms of our national conversation around the war, are really important to help us actually understand a little bit about what's going on now.
That's Sarah Botstein. She and Ken Burns are here for a whole series of events on the first of the 250th anniversary weeks. Their documentary and book is coming out in November. Sarah, I'm always interested in how artists decide to work and where they decide to work. He lives in the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire, which I've heard him talk about a million times. Do you live in the middle of nowhere,
I was
too?
born in Franconia Notch.
You
so
were?
I was born in New Hampshire. Gosh. And when I first went to work for Ken, I got a lot of street cred in the little town that my birthplace was Littleton, New Hampshire.
But you don't
and
live
I did
there
live there
anymore.
for a decade.
Wait a minute, hold on. Let's not leave Franconia Notch.
She now lives in a tiny island, relatively small island in southeastern New York State.
Manhattan.
Oh, okay. But I just
lived there
wonder,
for 10 years.
Having been born there, we all every year wait for the vote to come in at midnight at Franconia Notch. I mean, was this like a big thing in the town where the school kids all rallied around the vote count?
I left there when I was a little kid.
Dixville Notch, way up at the Canadian border. Franconia is a little bit slightly more.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm in the wrong place.
You are.
Oh, I thought it was the vote counting place.
No, that's
devastated.
Dixville where they're like
Dixville
6-3. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, forget that.
I'm glad you embarrassed yourself because I was about to say the same thing. So Ken Burns, you've talked about the Declaration of Independence, and because of you, Sarah, I read it last night. Let me read a couple of lines here. He has obstructed the administration of justice. He has made judges dependent on his will alone. He has sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people. He has cut off our trade. He has deprived us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. So how many times when you two and your zillions of colleagues are working in this incredible environment we find ourselves in, do you think about where we are right now?
It's the most important discipline that we have, Jim. I cannot begin to tell you that we hear all of that, and then sometimes we'll actually pull out a fuel rod because it's so rhyming with today that you just want to go, there are no neon signs of history. History is the greatest teacher only if you let it be. What we know is that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, and there's lots of things going on. All experience has shown, you read last night, that mankind are disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable, which means what I said before. We've been subjects. The whole history of the human race has been being a subject to a monarch or some sort of authoritarian figure, and we were inventing someone else. And Jefferson was understanding how big an effort that would be to have the responsibility, the virtues, the founders would call it, to live a life of the responsible citizen.
Can I digress for one more second? This morning, Marjorie and I are sitting here, and Mayor Wu and some other people came by because it's the 12th anniversary of the horror of the marathon. They were laying a wreath, and it's one Boston Day. But I'm also thinking about you, and there's another anniversary today from 78 years ago that I learned from you. Do you know what happened 78 years ago today on April 15th, Ken Burns?
What's the year?
1947.
Oh, yes.
What happened?
Oh, my God.
I learned from you. Come on.
I've spent so much time buried in the revolution.
What happened?
This is the most significant moment in the history of the greatest sport that's ever been invented, which is Jack Roosevelt Robinson, the grandson of a slave, made his way to first base at Ebbets Field to begin the season in Brooklyn, and thereby integrating for the first time in almost 6 decades our national pastime.
Yeah.
And we have to also note that the last team to integrate 12 years later, with Pumpsy Green, was our beloved Boston Red Sox. A shame and a blot on our illustrious history.
We're talking to Sarah Botstein and Ken Burns.
Okay, after embarrassing myself on Frequenting Not Introduced, I'm going to try to redeem myself. But this is just something I thought about with what's going on now with sort of this effort to erase history. And Jim and I would joke how appalled we were that we knew so little about African American history, that I didn't learn about the Tulsa, Oklahoma white supremacy massacre until we were talking about it after George Floyd. I should have learned that. I was an American studies major in college, never knew anything about that, or about how black Americans kind of get screwed in the GI Bill. They couldn't go out and they were getting these bogus mortgages and all this kind of stuff. So what difference does it make? I mean, it's going to make every difference to actually know our history, but we really don't know our history. And I didn't know it. It wasn't an anti-DEI thing. It was just we ignored black history.
We ignored all aspects of our history except for a kind of top-down narrative view. And then at World War II, that sort of fell out of fashion, and the historiography of history departments around the country and English departments sort of moved to Freudian, to then Marxist, economic, to symbolism, to deconstruct, all these different stuff. We've just adhered to the idea if you tell a good story, you have the ability to do something that our current dialogue doesn't permit us to do. The novelist Richard Powers said the best arguments in the world won't change a single person's point of view. The only thing that can do that is a good story. And so we are in trying to tell good story business, knowing that we don't have an agenda. We're not subscribing to this theory or this ism or this particular blinders only one way to look at the past, but say that the collective collecting of these experiences of so-called ordinary people, there are no ordinary people, and you will meet lots of people. I mean, just we aren't taught that sort of expansive view. So we've just had the Boston Tea Party was 1773, and 50 to 60 men, white men, both rich and poor, rode out. They were dressed how?
Oh, no.
They're dressed as Native Americans.
Oh, okay.
Right? And when I ask audiences, why? They go, oh, just so that they would disguise. No, they were making a point that they were no longer British. They were not of the mother country. They were, as Phil Deloria, the scholar, says, they were Aboriginal. Even though there's the great irony, if that's the right word, of the dispossession of the land that had been taking place for 150 years and would continue for another 150 years, nonetheless, they were saying that day, we are different from our mother country. We are separated. And so what we're looking for and why it takes 10 years and what Sarah's saying going in those books is to sort of find those things that wake you up from the fact that you did know, so that the facts that you didn't know also become part of the story that we're trying to tell.
And two things to the question of the Boston Tea Party. I think one takeaway from the whole 12 hours for audiences will probably be how central the Native American experience was to the actual revolution. And I think that piece of the story is also left out of our history.
How central it was? What does that mean?
Native Americans were here. They sided with us. They sided with the British. They had a very complicated civil war of their own. They had long functioning democracies that were interesting examples for us. And they were displaced after the war. And part of the way that soldiers were paid were in future possibility of land speculation and land scripts. So that's a piece of the revolution that I don't think we know as much in a collected kind of popular way.
We're 13 sea colonies, and what do we call our Congress and what do we call our army? The Continental Congress and the Continental Army. We have dreams of empire well before this.
Yeah.
You both mentioned things you learned, as I was saying before, we learn all the time from your films, and that's one of the most exciting parts of it to me, and I'm sure others. Not just what you learned that was new, what preconceived notion about history did you have, starting with you, Ken, that was disabused by your years of work on this thing?
Almost everything about the revolution, Jim. You go in, it's just like when you were saying things I thought I knew about. Yeah. You're talking about baseball. I thought Vietnam, I lived through it. I had a high draft number. I'm going to know. And every day is a daily humiliation that you realize that these shortcuts that we take,
we have something in common.
or what we pull out of school who knows, maybe Tulsa was just one paragraph in a chapter that you were just trying to get through to cover the test and nobody asked you the question. Or maybe it wasn't there, and to our ever-loving shame, it wasn't there, and so we don't have an integrated history, and that's what we have for almost 50 years tried to do, but it's always the learning curve, and we're sharing with you the process of discovery, not telling you this is what you should know.
You know, when you talk about stories, one of the things that I had never heard discussed, or I'm sure it was there, I just didn't know about it, was in Vietnam, when you talked to so many of the North Vietnamese and talked about their perspective and the young men coming down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Obviously, you came away with huge empathy for the North Vietnamese.
I mean, I think we want to humanize history, right? We want people to lean into the beautiful stories, the amazing people. We can see ourselves in others, whether we agree with them or not. Those are important connections to make, I think. You know, I'm a wife and a mother of 2 young kids, and one thing I had not understood at all or really thought about is, how does an 18th century war move? How do you move an army quietly on horseback and carriage with oxen and your family behind you? Women and children went with the soldiers as the army moved north to south. So I think even if somebody isn't interested in bayonets and brutal 18th century war, they'll be really interested in how women, mothers, wives supported the troops as they do in every war. Women are amazing in war. You can go to any country in any war, regardless of the politics, and just watch what the women are doing.
Why did they do that as opposed to staying home?
Most stayed at home, and most were forced to do things that they were told all their lives they couldn't do, and of course they did spectacularly well, but many could not follow their husbands for obvious emotional as well as just practical economic reasons, and they're cooking, they're burying the dead, they're washing the dude, they're doing the laundry, the kids are coming along. So we had a great deficit in this, is that there are no photographs and there's no newsreels. Unless the library's got something, please tell us now. So we had to go out and film the continent, and we had to film people who make it part of their lives' work to sort of reenact these things. Not to direct them, but to watch them do what they do in a kind of an impressionistic way. So they're somewhere between paintings and live cinematography exists this stuff, and where you get to see it, such a shock to see barefooted children walking across the battlefield at Monmouth in New Jersey. And suddenly you go, oh yes, and you're not seeing faces, you're just seeing little bits and parts of people, and you realize how thrilling this story is because it involves everyone. And one of the great historians of the Revolution, one of the first to write about it, is Mercy Otis Warren, a good friend of Abigail Adams, who we happened to get a young up-and-coming actor named Meryl Streep to read her part. I'm telling you, she's going places. But she has a view of human nature that is so powerful. It's like a lightning bolt from Zeus, or shall we say Hera, down to us, and you go, my goodness, and it belies everything you are taught about weaving and carding, and that's been going on too, but it's...
You know, I didn't even know that the Continental Army protected the airports until Trump mentioned it, which is really incredible. Can we end with current events with you, Ken Burns? We read yesterday afternoon that Donald Trump plans to ask Congress to claw back $1 billion from NPR and PBS, and no one is more associated with PBS than you and your colleagues. What do you say to good faith members of Congress who are sitting on a fence about whether or not this is worth the money?
It is a legitimate concern to ask whether a government should be involved in this sort of thing, but we've been doing it since our founding, being involved in arts and sciences and things like that don't have anything to do practically with the defense of the country. They just make the country worth defending. I can tell you that our Civil War film had, between the large grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities and a significant grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, more than a third, if not a half, of our budget for that entire series. So we wouldn't have been able to make it without that support, and still to this day, we enjoy corporate underwriting, as we did back then, General Motors and now Bank of America, but still the largest single contributor to our budget on this is the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And so this is going to be challenging for us. You can imagine what it's going to be like for somebody who's just starting out and says, hey, I want to make a film about the Brooklyn Bridge, which was my thing 50 plus years ago, and people looked at me and said, "This child is trying to sell me the Brooklyn Bridge." No.
I'm convinced. Ken Burns, Sarah Botstein, it is a thrill to have you both, and we're really excited. Book and 6 nights of the documentary in November. We really can't wait. Great to see you both.
Thank you both so much for coming in. We've been speaking with Ken Burns and Sarah Botstein behind the American Revolution documentary. You have to wait till November, but it's going to be on then. They're on a screening tour now until the official launch of the film. For more info, go to pbs.org/Ken Burns/The American Revolution with little dashes between the American Revolution. Thank you again. Coming up after the new news, we're going to check in with Ricardo, Pierre Lewis, and Rose Stram about their business prospects in this difficult time for owners of black businesses. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com. Paris Austin hosts a weekly series that serves up Black intellect, culture, and joy from Greater Boston and beyond. Don't miss a new episode of GBH News, Rooted, tonight at 7:30 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. A federal court in Maryland will hold a hearing today in the case of a man who was wrongfully deported to El Salvador last month. NPR's Franco Ordonez reports the Trump administration was ordered to help facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, but the White House says it can't comply.
The Trump team is downplaying this as a paperwork issue. They insist Abrego Garcia has ties to the MS-13 gang. Again, his lawyer says he's not a member.
NPR's Franco Ordonez. Despite a Supreme Court ruling directing the White House to facilitate his return, El Salvador maintains custody of Abrego Garcia. The man's family continues to push for his release, stressing his lack of criminal history and the dangers he faces in El Salvador. The Trump administration is freezing $2 billion in federal grants to Harvard University. NPR's Alyssa Nadworny reports the withholding of funds follows the university's refusal to comply with the list of demands from the administration.
On Monday, the nation's wealthiest university became the first college to say it would not comply with a list of demands from the federal government, saying they were unlawful in exchange for federal funds. The Trump administration's demands included reporting foreign students who commit conduct violations to federal authorities, giving students and faculty less power in university affairs, and having an outside party oversee academic departments for what the administration calls viewpoint diversity. The changes stem from a federal investigation of Harvard and dozens of other schools over diversity efforts and alleged anti-Semitism on campus. Alyssa Nadworny, NPR News.
In a post on social media today, President Trump suggested that Harvard University should lose its tax-exempt status. It's the first public comment from the president since the administration froze federal funding. A vaccine advisory committee for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is holding its first public meeting of the Trump administration today. NPR's Ping Huang reports this meeting was postponed from February.
In the two-day public meeting, CDC staff will present data and updates on a range of vaccines to a panel of independent advisors, who will then discuss and vote on recommendations for some of them, including RSV and chikungunya. Claire Hannon, head of the Association of Immunization Managers, says she's reassured by the meeting's agenda.
Really glad to see that it's scheduled and that, they're holding public comments.
The committee's advice shapes access and insurance coverage for vaccines. Vaccine advocates have been concerned that Trump administration officials would interfere with this committee by removing members. That has not happened yet. Ping Huang, NPR News.
On Wall Street, the Dow was up 138 points. This is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Local seniors say they're worried about disruptions to Social Security. Advocates and elected officials have been pressing Trump officials over staff reassignments within the Social Security Administration and the possibility of workforce cuts. At a news conference organized by Congresswoman Catherine Clark today, Mass Senior Action Council member Karen Lynch says that elders and others are anxious.
I never thought I would have to explain how crucial Social Security is to our community and how just the rumor of cuts sends seniors, disabled people, and surviving children into a panic state.
Lynch says that she's heard from local seniors who've had trouble getting through to the Social Security Administration by phone and making appointments in person. President Trump has said he does not plan to target Social Security benefits that go out to recipients. Well, the seat for Boston City Councilor Tanya Fernandez Anderson could be left vacant until November. City Council charter calls for a special election if a seat is left vacant more than 180 days before the general election. But Council President Ruth Z. Louijean and Councilor Liz Breeden filed a petition yesterday to waive that process. They noted high costs, potential low voter turnout for a summer election, and inadequate time for voters to learn about the candidates on the ballot. Fernandez Anderson announced her plans to resign earlier this month after pleading guilty to charges related to a kickback scheme involving taxpayer money. All the way up to 63 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from Drexel University, whose cooperative education program positions students to explore future careers and discover their ideal profession before graduation. This is experiential education. More at drexel.edu.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, enjoying our new lawyer-approved music. We had some copyright issues. That's why we've had to change it. Didn't want to be deported. We're live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here tomorrow and Friday, but not Tuesday next week because of the marathon running. It's cleanup after the day of the marathon. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. So just about 2 years ago, our next guest scored contracts for the Boston Convention of the NAACP. That's when we met them. Overseeing event production and transportation at the convention center. They're returning, actually the third time they've been with us, to give us an update on Boston's small business economy and discuss what it's like to be black entrepreneurs in a second Trump administration. Joining us now are Ricardo Pierre Lewis, the founder and CEO of Privé Parking, and Rose Starum, who's owner and founder of Rosemark Production in Dorchester. It's great to see you two again. Thanks so much for being back.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in, both of you. So just to elaborate a little bit about what Jim said about what you do, we'll start with you, Rose. Tell us about your business.
Sure. We are a large-scale production company. We build stages, rig lights, and sound. And, a lot of people think we're event planners, but we're a little bit more than that because we bring in heavy equipment and produce large-scale events.
Okay, and how about you, Ricardo?
We're a parking solution and transportation management company. Started off with just a valet parking company, and today we do things from garage management, parking, transportation consulting, and transportation management with motor coaches, minibuses, and black car services.
I have to say, my memory is iffy. I remember you two it's amazing. This is a tribute to both of you, by the way. One, you're good storytellers, and I'm thinking about both of you telling us when we met, when you said, I've done things for the Obamas, I've done inaugurations, I've done stuff in Europe, and before the NAACP, I hadn't done anything in Boston. So how is this environment? We've talked to former Governor Baker, Governor Healy about the pathetically low rate of contracting with women and people of color. Same thing with Mayor Wu, who's trying to improve that. Well, how is the environment for your operation these days in 2025?
I mean, it hasn't gotten any easier, right? So with this new, we were complaining when we were under the Biden administration that things were a little rough for us. And I think it's across the board. When we talk about not only small businesses, I think we talk about people of color in general, just not having those opportunities to actually showcase who we are and what we do, even though it's on a large scale. And when I went international, I actually had more of, I'm an American than I am black, give me an opportunity. And so being an American internationally meant, these amazing contracts, amazing opportunities. But now in this new era, now I'm not only facing struggles here in America as a black woman, but now as an American leaving the country to do work, we're going to be facing some struggles as well.
Because people in other countries are angry at us about the policies of the President of the United States.
Do you get that sense already? Or is it really? How so? Tell us.
The questions of like, well, what are you bringing to us, and how is this going to affect our outlook and our people, and like the tariffs and the issues that we're having with Canada as well. All of these things are putting pressure on them to look insular at people in their own countries to take care of their own work.
And I was thinking it might tick people off that you hire an American given a choice in this climate. No. I think of parking garages and cars, that's not a tariff type deal, and you're mostly American, so.
Yeah, but people come here from other countries or don't, Marjorie.
Yeah, right. So how does this all impact you?
I mean, I think everyone's going, trying to figure out how to really be competitive and, grow their business, especially with the language. DEI now has changed, and, no one is leading with DEI from the federal administration going all the way down. But
do you feel that already? Is that trickling down already in some of the bids you're making for contracts?
Yes.
Or is it just in the air?
I think it's just in the air, but I think the city of Boston, and I'm going to give credit, I think they're doing a great job. We just got awarded the exclusive transportation provider for the national women's soccer team.
At White Stadium?
Yeah, at White Stadium.
Congratulations.
So, we just got awarded that. So big accomplishment, looking really forward to just growing with the city of Boston and partnering. But one of the things I want to echo is the fact that they're kind of getting away from DEI. I think we need to be intentional and prioritize localization, right? And so I feel like that's the new language, right? How many local businesses that actually started in Boston, based in Boston, are being impacted? And so I can't really speak much for all businesses. I can speak for myself. But there are major events that's happening within the city of Boston in the next 2 years. Look at FIFA. We have FIFA coming in 2026.
That's World Cup, we're talking. Yeah, World Cup, yeah.
And if you look at the numbers, we're going to be impacted. I think with the economy, it's about $1.1 billion will come into New England. And out of $1.1 billion, $800 million will come into Massachusetts, right? And so if we look at that number, how much money is actually going to be spent with local women-owned, minority-owned businesses? And I think that's a real metric to really see, are we really moving forward, or is it just smoke and mirrors?
Well, what are the early signs? 2026 is not that far away.
No, you're right. It's not.
So what are the early signs that you're seeing, Ricardo?
For me, this is a big event, and Rose might have her own experience, but it's who is the point of contact, right? How do we get in front of this group or this department? How do we sell our services? How do we even go after the RFPs or bid? What's the process? And I think there's still kind of some gray space on what that looks like, and I think it's multiple departments, not just the city of Boston, it's not just the Commonwealth. I think this is a collective group, but what does that look like when it comes to how do we get involved?
You're nodding your head, Rose, in agreement. What's that been like for you?
Well, I first of all, when Ricardo talks about DEI, I kind of laugh a little bit because I think that we had DEI in place 2 years ago when we had this conversation, right? And so the rollback on DEI has personally not affected me.
Because it wasn't so great when DEI was okay, is what your point was.
I mean, to be honest.
That's good.
And I don't only mean in the city of Boston or Massachusetts. This is a national issue for people of color in all walks of life to get work and to be paid equally and fairly for the work that they do. And so when the national and NAACP came in, it was a moment that we could showcase that we had the ability in the city to do the work. We did the work. And I think that's a testament to both Ricardo and I's ability as business owners. How do we get in front of these people is the question. Where's the resources for us to do that? I think the governor's doing an amazing job. I think Secretary Howell in the Economic Division is doing an amazing job.
She was here a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm a member of BECMA, the Black Economic Council of
Shout
America.
out to BECMA.
Shout out to freaking BECMA. They hold your hand, and they really take black businesses and they try to get you in front of the right people. And I couldn't be here in Massachusetts right now without BECMA's aid.
So if wait, can I stay on that for just a second? So you're praising Mayor Wu. You're praising the governor and BECMA. And by the way, the former head of BECMA now works for Mayor Wu doing his economic stuff. If people seem to be, the leaders, attempting to walk the walk, not just talk the talk, because I'm sure you remember, we asked you the same question we asked every NAACP leader a couple of years ago. Is this going to be 1 week where we're going to focus on black-owned businesses, or is this going to continue beyond? And in unanimity, they said it's going to go beyond, and both of you said, we'll see how it goes beyond. So if so many leaders are so supportive, why are things still so tough, Rose?
It has to trickle down, Jim. It has to trickle down. The leaders can only do so much. It's not only the government that has to, reinforce things, but actual private entities have to double down. They actually have to hire us. They have to put us in positions, and at the end of the day, they have to pay us equal
And why
salaries.
are they not doing those things?
That's a great question.
Well, you have an answer. I know you don't want to know.
I have an answer
You
for
have an
everything.
answer.
Well,
So what is the answer to
It's
that?
systematic. It's you don't deserve. Let me tell you what you deserve. You are coming into this space. You're lucky to be here. And this is what we're gonna give you. And so right now, I think people of color and all people, especially in America today, with what's going on with Trump, I think we're all saying, no, we don't want this. We deserve better, and give us what we deserve.
We're talking to Rose Theron from Rosemark Production in Dorchester, and Ricardo Pierre Lewis, founder and CEO of Privé Parking. I'm sorry, Margaret.
Preparing to talk to you guys, I was reading a lot about groups that help businesses, and Trump, as people know, slashed the Small Business Association, and that gets a lot of help to people, a lot of money.
By the way, he gutted the Minority Business Development Agency,
I was going to just get to that. The Minority Business Development Agency was started in 1969, I read, by Richard Nixon. And then last year, this Texas judge said, no, we can't do this. We can't have any minority development agency. We have to. Three white business owners sued, and the judge said that it was a violation of the Constitution to consider racial minority groups giving business. So I thought, this is incredible. The Small Business Administration, and this. I don't know how much these people matter, but it sounds like they matter in terms of point person. Where do you go? How do you get the money? How do you put your plan together? So these kinds of things really hurt, I would think.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever had any contact with the Small Business Administration or the Minority Business Development Agency?
Weren't you the Small Business of the Year from the Chamber last year?
Thank you, Jim, for mentioning that.
Weren't you?
Yeah, no, we were 2024 Small Business of the Year. You made some important facts. I think, I'll just echo from what I'm hearing on the grounds in my community with other local businesses. It is really, really tough, and it's getting even harder. One of my favorite places to go get chicken and waffles in Roxbury, Maxine on St. James, just announced that they're closing their doors, right? And so
why?
They can't afford the rent anymore. The building got sold, and the new landlord increased the price, and they just can't sustain themselves anymore, right? And this has been around for quite some time. And so this is, a domino effect.
Yeah.
You're going to start seeing this happen more and more unless we're intentional, we provide real access to capital, and then also look at contracts. I think what happens is, like you mentioned, we get the opportunity to perform at the NAACP National Convention. It's great, right? But if it's just a one-time thing, then that's really not giving us a real opportunity to grow and sustain ourselves. If you look at what's going on in the city of Boston, you'll notice there'll be 99-year leases for developers and developments and hotels and et cetera. If you gave us a 99-year lease, I'm telling you right now, I'm pretty sure we'll do very, very well, right?
Yeah.
And so if you look at the process and you look at the existing system on how these contracts are awarded, they have always left us out, right? And if we are not intentional, if we don't voice ourselves and say, hey, listen, things need to change. And this doesn't just start with local businesses. It starts with community development. It starts with community activists. It's a collective group, and we have to be intentional. I think the city of Boston right now is in the perfect position to really show this country that we're intentional and that we can make a change. And so I'm just going to put that out.
Well, can we stay there for a second before you're saying, you're more focused, correct me if I'm wrong, Ricardo, on local business. You're less so. You praised Mayor Wu's administration a few minutes ago. So are the words being met by reality in terms of your work?
Jim, I can't answer that. What I can say
or won't. Which one?
I can't answer that because we are the first, and
I mean, in your area,
in transportation, with the city. This is the first time that we're doing a partnership with private and public space. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it's a great accomplishment. Very happy for my team. Looking forward to build. But if it's just privé parking, then what is the true impact that we're having, right? Let's look at when the stadium is up and running, how many black local businesses are food vendors? How many black local businesses are doing the cleaning, landscaping, security, and et cetera? Let's look at the entire operation budget, and let's see how much money is actually going to local black businesses.
We should put this in context, which I think will not surprise people. When we had the recession of 2008, when we had COVID, the percentage of black-owned businesses that failed was far greater than businesses owned by white people in this country. So you had a question, then I want to ask what your recommendations are, not just for leaders to change the dynamic, but for ordinary people who say they care about having diversity amongst people who own businesses. We'll get to that in a second because I interrupted Marjorie a minute ago.
No, I was just going to say, in terms of like the hidden costs of things too, I was reading this piece by Tiana Woodard in the Globe, was talking about the MCCA, the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority, and it talked about how, Rose, you had a contract with them, but then you were going to have to pay $40,000 in extra insurance to meet the agency's coverage requirement. Now, you ended up not having to do that, but tell us how that happened and how you resolved that issue.
Absolutely, and again, it's with our catalysts, it's with the people who are holding our hands and making sure that we're pushing the door open. BECMA, we are members, we went to them and we showed our resume. I think my resume is pretty impressive. I don't know,
That's what we hear.
It is.
Very impressive.
And they knocked on that door and eventually pushed it open. And when other people were seeing our resume, they said, this makes sense for you to be here.
Yeah.
And so I commend the MCCA. I commend, obviously, our catalysts and our pushers in this, BECMA. And they're the ones who said, she deserves to be here. She has the right things in play, and she can handle being here. Give her an opportunity. But these old ancient rules of insurance guidelines that she's not prepared to pay yet, because the infrastructure there with the big boys, they can pay that, and it's nothing. But for a company like mine, it does mean something.
So they ended up taking care of the insurance, the $40,000 in the insurance.
Yes, they gave us a gap, and that actually helped us get through the door. And so that is, and I am proud to say that we are the first minority woman-owned company in the building. So I'm very proud of that.
Wow.
But that circles back to Jim's question, I think, too, is like, how do we move forward doing better? And I can't afford a $40,000 insurance policy because people are not paying us what we deserve.
Yeah.
And that's where it all stems from, the wage inequality with minority companies. Privé deserves the same amount of money that, another bus company, because I don't want any right issues either. And I deserve the same amount of money that any other company deserves. For me to pay insurance, you have to be able to have clients that want to pay what they would pay another white company. So that's our issue.
So how blatant is this? Is it like?
It's bad.
Give me.
I want to mention something because it's interesting to me. Rose and her company has able to facilitate and continue with the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority. We both were a part of NAACP Convention Center. I haven't, until today, we have not been back at the convention center providing bus shuttles. Rose says it's very difficult in the city of Boston to facilitate and gain contracts we have been awarded a contract with the city of Boston and private, and also the private sector. So it's kind of interesting how things kind of unfold, because I would love to do more work with the convention center. Rose would love to do more work with the city of Boston, but it's, we can't seem to cross that path.
But when you say the pay is different, are you talking about that your contract, whatever the the X amount you're going to get, is not going to be as much as a white firm, or it's the hourly wage that your drivers might get paid, or what are we talking about?
I mean, for me personally, it is the fact that I am a woman-owned minority company. And as a woman, as women out here, and people of color, we are very much disproportionately paid in the work.
If I owned your company and did the exact same work you did, I'd make more money.
Jim, I think I'm going to hire you and save you those. I think if I could just give you my resume and you walk in, I will be a billionaire tomorrow. So there is a do you deserve? You're lucky to be here, and I think I'm a lucky one. And I'm still complaining. So
how stressful?
But there is that says you're lucky to be here, so shut up.
Just take it.
Okay.
I know this is how stressful is this when you know how good your work is, and we know more than we know a pretty decent amount about both your work from having known you a couple of years. How stressful is this?
I mean, Jim, it's a part of the game, right? When I decided to be an entrepreneur, I knew there was going to be challenges, there was going to be barriers. But one thing I tell myself every single day when I wake up is, if I don't do it, then who will? And so that's.
So what should get back to what I said a minute ago? Both of you, starting with you, Ricardo. What should real people who want to see businesses owned by people of color prosper do, and what should people, like when the governor's here on the 25th, what should the governor do that she or her administration are not doing?
Rose, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Rose.
I'm ready.
Go ahead.
I've been ready. I woke up ready. But no, number one, for that other question too, we've been surviving a long time. So survival is an everyday thing since birth for people of color in this country, and I want to make sure that's heard loud and clear. Second of all, the fact that I have to have all of these organizations push me forward with my resume is a problem. So moving forward, I'm begging institutions and other businesses to start looking at the resumes, start trusting the resumes, start trusting the fact that we have the ability to perform, and then also allowing us to be paid at that same rate. I also want to give fair warning to the minority businesses out there. We are going to face COVID with a recession. Get ready, because we will fail before everybody else. Just like we were dying in large numbers when COVID hit, if a recession hits, it's going to hit us even harder, and we must get prepared.
Do you want to add something to that, Ricardo?
Yeah, you mentioned, what message would I say to real people in our communities? I'm in transportation and parking. It starts with us. And what I mean by that is we have the spending power to spend within our own services, right? So for instance, there's no reason why we shouldn't get calls from anywhere between the sports industry, from the entertainment industries, right? You have guys like Jaylen Brown, who has great initiatives on when it comes to impacting Black local businesses, right? When people come in this city, are they really utilizing Black services, right? If we need a Black car service, reach out to Privé. If we need buses, just reach out to Privé. Put pressure on the school systems. It's prom season, it's graduation season, right? They're gonna need buses, they're gonna need limousines, they're gonna need staff for when it comes to graduation. Are they being intentional when it comes to really looking at local businesses like Privé Parking and say, hey, we need parking lot assistance for this graduation at BU, BC? So I think it really starts with just us as a city. And like I said, those are just small examples on how, if you really wanna make a difference, pick up a call, go on the website, fill out a request for proposal, and we'll get back to you.
By the way, I assume if they just Google your Privé Parking and Rosemark, they'll find your operation.
Yes,
absolutely.
So you and I can talk after the show about when I start working for you, Rose. Before we deal with that, you had something you wanted to promote before you left here. What is it?
I have to promote. We're doing a wonderful event at 100 High Street, big queer food festival. We're going to have all these great chefs come from across the U.S. and in Boston to do a food festival, and I hope that people will join.
When is it?
It is May 3rd through the 4th. Get your tickets at bigqueerfoodfest.com.
Bigqueerfoodfest.com.
Yes, this is diversity at its best.
Do you want to say it? Do you have anything you want to promote there?
I'm always going to promote Privé Parking. When it comes to parking solution, transportation, anything, I am your guy. We are local. We provide amazing quality service, and don't just take it from me. give us a chance.
By the way, we asked people about you in particular after the convention, and you got rave reviews.
Yeah.
Literally from everybody who'd used you. We love seeing you too. We hope for better times, and we look forward to your 4th appearance here.
I love
and
it.
in the near future. Rose, Ricardo, it's great to see you both.
I want to spell privé parking Prive with one of those lines.
Apostrophe, there you go.
The thing over the top. Okay, we've been speaking with Ricardo Pierre-Louis, the founder and CEO of Privé Parking, Prive with the thing, and Rose Starum, owner and founder of Rosemark Productions in Dorchester. Thank you both very much.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
It's great to see you.
Coming up after a quick break, it's usually time for 2 more things, but today it's time for 2 more hot dogs. No idea what that means? Well, we'll find out. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It debuted as Say Brother in 1968.
When I'm coming through Boston, I watch Say Brother.
Became Basic Black in 1997.
Basic Black has always been there as a voice for our community.
And now, GBH News Rooted. The name has evolved, but the DNA of this show has stayed the same. It's about Black people, by Black people. I'm Paris Alston, host of GBH News Rooted. You can catch us Tuesday nights at 7:30 on GBH2 or watch on demand on the GBH News YouTube channel.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Newberry Court, serving Concord, Massachusetts for 30 years as a not-for-profit continuing care retirement community dedicated to older adults. More at newberrycourt.org. And the Museum of Science, where you can experience the heart of New England, their giant screen film showcasing this iconic region. You can see it now on the IMAX Dome screen. Tickets at mos.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The moment you've all been waiting for. This is ordinarily 2 more things.
That's
Today,
right.
It is 2 more hot dogs, as we'll explain to you in a second. We're joined by Joanne Chang and Christopher Myers on the opening day of Flour Bakery's Boston Common launch, replacing the Earl of Sandwich. We'll tell you where it is in a minute. And because my ears start burning every time a new hot dog location pops up, we decided to invite them today to introduce the Flour Dog to Boston. Congratulations to you both.
Thank you very much.
It's a big day.
It is a big day. Yes, it is.
Very exciting day.
And when you called it the Flour Dog, I have to say we got a preview of the hot dogs the other day. And I like hot dogs. I liked everything about the hot dog. But I got to say, the flour, bread, was it brioche? Or what is it?
Brioche.
Oh my God, the
It's a
roll
dinner
was
roll.
unbelievable. It was the best.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And you make it. We should be clear. You make it. And it is absolutely
At Flour
fabulous.
Bakeries, that's right. And so where is this place?
So we are located next to the tennis courts and the baseball field and the Parkman bandstand. So
Great.
kind of right in the middle there.
Great, near the Embrace.
Yes, right across from the Embrace.
In between the Embrace and the tennis courts.
Yes. Okay.
And if you'll all start lining up right here, we have hot dogs for everybody.
No, that's not true, actually, so don't get too excited. Okay, so besides hot dogs, which we're going to eat on the air, and by the way, Christopher's already told me I'm not allowed to do the usual sounds I make when I like food on the air, which is really offensive, I should say.
Well, yes, and it's gross, right? I mean,
is gross.
I
It is
actually
gross.
thought I had invented the word.
Which word?
Which gastrogasm. but it's in the Urban Dictionary, and there's a picture.
Gastrogasm.
There's a picture of you with a cross through it.
Okay, so we'll leave him out of the conversation. So what's on a flour dog, Joanne Chang?
You got to take
Okay,
that.
so we have our house-made roll, and then we have potato
Could you
sticks.
move your mic up about a quarter minute?
Of
That's
course.
perfect, thank
We
you.
have potato sticks on the bottom, and then we have chili, onions, a homemade relish, and a little bit of celery salt.
It's unbelievable. We had Among the First the other day, and it was fabulous. You want to add anything to that, Christopher?
I really want you to take a bite.
And make a sound.
Yeah,
Go. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Why hot dogs? I mean, I think if you...
Why not hot dogs? What are you, crazy?
Because it's sort of not... When you go into flour, I mean, you have wonderful sandwiches, wonderful
Right,
soups, wonderful
right,
pastry, of course.
right.
But I don't think of you as hot dogs. And Myers and Chang, you're great. What is the kind of food you call that? Is it fusion kind of
Asian
deal?
fusion, I'd call it. Is that okay?
Okay.
No.
Okay,
You
no.
could.
Okay.
You could.
What is it?
Well, first of all, this is our hot dog and pony show. I hope you like
Thank you very much. I got it without you helping me. Thank you.
I mean, it's the Commons. It should be fun. Like, hopefully, if we have the nerve, maybe we'll be doing it in the winter when there's skaters out and you get a hot chocolate and a hot dog. At least that's the plan on paper.
It's a great location.
It is. It's a great location.
Oh, my God. I'm sorry. Oh, my God.
See, listen to
I'm
that.
a hot dog aficionado. It is unbelievable.
There's only a few times when people are just screaming, "Oh my God!"
Yeah.
Okay, that's it, and it's you eating.
Now, let me tell you something else. The other day, I was
we didn't get there. Why
What?
the hot dogs?
Oh.
How it came about?
Because they said it's
you
Boston
just
Common, whatever.
It's a park. At home, you just came up with this idea. Why don't we do it? Or did you walk by the spot and say this would be a great spot? Or
Well, we walk by that spot every day, a couple times a day actually,
Yeah.
when we're walking our dog, and it's an iconic location,
Yes.
looking out onto, as we said earlier, the Embrace and the tennis courts and the baseball fields, and people love to eat hot dogs in the park.
They do.
And they also love soft serve and
yes.
Well, I want to get to sauce serve. By the way, there are going to be chairs outside, right?
Yes.
You can't get inside the facility. You go to
Correct.
a window, you order the thing, and you sit outside. Now, I want to say, when I saw Joanne the other day, you were off somewhere doing something. She fed me some of the sauce. I don't like soft serve because it's too airy to me. This is not too airy. What'd you do to soft serve to add some density?
If I could tell you how many tastings that we've had.
Is that
to do this,
true?
it's unbelievable.
every Tuesday for about the last 3 months we've had.
Is that really true?
Oh, yeah.
To get it to that consistency.
And this flavor, and yes.
It's fat. What is the flavor?
So we started off with vanilla and strawberry. And then we have chocolate dip and raspberry
It's
dip.
fabulous. What do you think of the soft serve?
It's real ice cream.
It's gastro-orgasmic is what she wanted to say.
Yes.
It's great.
And,
This is great.
and those things, which are
great.
muffins, look like the Embrace. I assume that is intentional.
Yes.
Yes.
Is that really intentional?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. It looks like the monument.
Wow, you know how easily replaced you are at this point.
Wow.
That is incredible. I'll take one of those too.
Yeah.
Thank
How
you.
do
by
you
the
do
way.
that? You put it in an Embrace muffin tin?
So it's called a braided pastry, and we wanted to do something to extra signify that the Embrace is there and the importance of that memorial. And so the proceeds of this go to
The Boston Foundation.
They do?
Foundation.
Yes.
That's fabulous.
So this
That
is a
really
chai
fabulous.
babka. It's basically brioche dough filled with brown butter and chai spices and sugar, and then it's all rolled up into a little coil and then baked and then rolled around in more sugar.
Okay, before you go,
This is delicious too. Tell people that don't know, what's in brioche?
Brioche is flour, butter, eggs, sometimes a little milk, yeast, a little salt, but it's mostly butter and eggs.
Yeah.
why are you not making fun of the sounds she's making?
Well,
I don't understand this.
because it's her. And,
Okay.
and you know, she's
What are the hours this joint,
a
Joanne?
national treasure.
What are the
National
hours?
treasure.
So we are going to do hours according to the season. So right now we're open 7 to 7, Monday through Friday, Saturday 8 to 6. And then as the days get longer, our opening hours will extend. And we plan on staying open till 8 p.m., maybe even 9 p.m. when the sun sets.
Oh, that would be great.
And then as it gets colder, we'll probably scale back a little bit.
I have to say, I am more excited about this than he is. I am really excited about this opening. Boston Flower Common, is that correct?
Yes.
Well, you know,
Is that the name of this joint?
Flower
Boston
Boston
Common.
Common.
Flower,
Boston
whatever
Common.
it is.
Yes.
Yeah,
In any case, it is open sort of halfway between the Embrace and that beer garden thing right
Yes.
off Tremont
and the
Street.
other thing is the garage, the used garage is right underneath the common. I
Right.
mean, how many people park? I park in there all the time, and you come out of there and you basically at your front door. So that would be a lovely little addition to parking your car. In the
This is as
underground.
good as the dog gets, by the way,
It's
as
really
someone
good.
who knows dogs. Last word?
You know what's as good as a dog? That with National Public Radio under attack. I think it's terrific that you brought one of Mr. Rogers' cardigans to wear today.
Thank you.
You took it out of the museum.
Thank you very much.
You put it on.
It's got a couple mothballs in it. Christopher Myers, Joanne Chang, congratulations.
Please
Opening
come.
day.
Thank
We
you.
are honored
Have a hot dog.
to
Please
have
come.
you.
Can't wait to see
People
you.
go over there today because you are open.
Yes, we're
We
open
are.
right now.
We are.
All right,
We're really
okay.
excited.
Cranking out dogs.
Thanks,
This
you
is
guys.
wonderful.
It's great
Thank
to see you
so
both.
much.
Thank
This
you.
is a big thrill for
I hope
both.
I hope somebody eats these. This
yeah.
is earmarked
We'll eat 'em,
for
don't
Henry
worry.
Santoro, wherever
Yeah,
Henry
we're
is.
good.
This
Okay.
is
Not here,
this.
but it's okay.
I know he's not.
We're
Hi,
gonna
And
Yeah, somebody else going to eat it first, I hate to
Perfect
tell you.
2 is really fabulous.
Okay.
Good luck, you two.
All right.
We have
Nice
been
to see
speaking
you.
with the fabulous Joanne Chang and her equally fabulous husband, Christopher Myers of Myers & Chang and Flour Bakery, and whose 10th location opens today on Boston Common, featuring the Embrace Morning Bun and the Flour Dog. And let me tell you, you haven't eaten a hot dog. I love hot dogs, but what I really love is the bun. It's unbelievable, which makes sense coming from a bakery. Okay, coming up after a quick break, NBC Sports Boston, Trenny Casey. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Last year, during the presidential election, a veterans group started holding nonpartisan public meetings at brew pubs.
I think it's helpful to have veterans in the room because we don't start a conversation with who cares more about America. It's just sort of assumed.
The need has not gone away, so they're continuing the tradition. I'm Elsa Chang, Pints and Patriotism on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And the Boston Symphony Orchestra, announcing the 2025 season of Tanglewood, showcasing the beauty of incredible surroundings and world-class music. Tanglewood, where music goes for the summer. Tanglewood.org.
That is one good hot dog. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow. Speaking of food, Milk Straight's Christopher Kimball has a new book on Italian food. Juliette Kayyem, Michael Curry, and more. Joined now on Zoom by Sports Authority Trenny Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston. Hello there, Trenny.
Oh, can't hear Trenny.
Going well so far, I should say.
Oh, sorry. I muted
hi there,
myself
Trenny.
so that I didn't bother you guys.
No,
nice
that's
to
okay.
see you.
I wasn't there. Sorry.
Welcome. Hi.
So Trenny is a big marathon runner herself, and the Boston Marathon is going to it's Boston 2020 April 21st, 129th Boston Marathon, 30,000 people. There was a funny story in the Globe about where everybody comes from, and they come from all over the world. Are you running this year?
I am not running this year because I've got my MS
That's right.
Thing that I'm fundraising for, which I am running a marathon at the end of May, but I'm just running it as part of a training week because, why not just run a marathon as part of a larger training week? Like that's what most normal people do.
Exactly.
But I will be there spectating on Monday, and at a lot of the events over the weekend. I think it's the best weekend of the entire year in Boston. It's just, listen, from a perspective of someone who ran the race before I moved here and after I moved here, like there's just something about the energy in the city that weekend, but it's also really cool because, listen, I know there's a lot of people who have different feelings about how difficult it is to get into the marathon, whether it's the times that have gotten significantly faster over the last 15 years, 20 years, or whether it's the amount that you have to raise in order to participate as a charity runner in the race. But there is something, because so many, I think it's 80% of the runners are qualifiers. It's pretty cool to walk around and you know that you're with like the best of the best running athletes in the entire world. Like this is still the premier race. If you are a runner and you can run fast enough to qualify, it is still a really big deal to get a BQ and to be here. It's an elite race. It's so fun. However, I was surprised at the story you guys sent along to find out that the chunk of runners that have the most entrants is the 40 to 49-year-olds.
Yeah, I was surprised at that too. I think maybe because their kids are grown up or something at that stage of life. If they have children, they have more time to run.
I mean, I don't know many friends whose kids are grown up at 40 to 49. Most of them are like preteens, teenagers, or even, I guess maybe if you had kids a little bit younger, they're in college. But like, if I would have had a kid at 30, Marjorie, that kid would only be 17. Like, I'd be carting that kid all over the place to like soccer and stuff. Like, I don't know where these people, although I think also, this should be noted, I believe it's males 40 to 49.
It is males
that
40 to
have
49.
that largest chunk. So maybe mom is carting those kids around to while dad is running. There's also going to be, I just saw like 50-plus-year-old women. There's going to be like over 1,000 50-plus-year-old women that are running in it as qualifiers. Like that's really amazing to run at that level for that long into your life.
What is the qualifying time now for men and for women? Do you know?
It varies by age, right? So this year is the last year of the current qualifying time. So if you're a male, 34 or younger, you have to run 3 hours flat, and for a female, it's 3:30. Next year, that goes up 5 minutes. So for a female 34 or younger, it's a 3:25, and for a male 34 or younger, it's going to be 2:55.
Wow! So that would be
run a sub 3.
Yeah, I was going to say sub 3 for men would be what, 6-minute miles the whole way, something like that.
Not great at math, Marjorie.
Yeah. Jim, can you figure that out, please?
Not quite.
Yeah, not quite.
Not
quite 6.
We should also say, well, it's a joyous
I don't
occasion.
think it's quite. I think it's more like, just under a 7-minute mile.
I think it is. We said this earlier in the day. Today is also the anniversary of the bombing, 12th anniversary. And as we said, Mayor Wu, the Richard family, a whole bunch of others were here to commemorate that. And it's also one of the wonderful things that is done on this day is this one Boston Day. If you go to the city's website, you can learn what the mayor and others are urging people to do to commemorate both the sacrifices and the solidarity of the people in Boston after this horror show of a dozen years ago. We're talking to Trenny Casey. Trenny, we have gone out of our way with you to celebrate women's sports as best we can. And there was a UConn, as we said, the UConn women, we talked about this last week, won the women NCAA thing. And yesterday, one of their stars, Paige Beckers, was drafted by the Dallas Wings, which is the WNBA team. But I saw some numbers, I don't know where the article was, that said that while the viewing audience for the college championship was solid, it was like 8 million people for the game.
But 8.5, yeah.
8.5, it was less than half the number of people who watched the championship game last year where Caitlin Clark lost. And so I worry, and I'm sure you think about this a lot, that a lot of this continues to be a Caitlin Clark phenomenon, or is that a misplaced fear?
So I don't know, Jim. Honestly, I don't know. What I am hoping is that it was more a factor of last year you didn't just have Caitlin Clark. You had a rematch between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, between LSU and Iowa, these two teams that had battled it out the year before in the Final Four. And now they were facing each other in the finals, and you had this rivalry. And one of the articles I read pointed out, losing Juju Watkins, who is a star player for USC, had it been USC, so Juju Watkins versus Paige Beckers, maybe you've got, a different interest level in it. Not to say that the University of South Carolina, Dawn Staley's team, is obviously a phenomenal perennial winner now in women's college basketball. But at the end of the day, I think people watch sports because of the quote unquote, I know they're not characters, they're real people, but the characters, right? Like you want a good versus evil, a team that you can root for versus a team that kind of drives you crazy. And I think we even saw this. I know the men's, Final Four and the finals did well, but it wasn't like earth-shattering numbers. And a big reason for that is because, it was Houston and Florida. I literally could not tell you, at least I can tell you a couple of the names of the women who play, for UConn. I couldn't tell you a single name of a player on the University of Florida or the University of Houston because Cooper Flagg wasn't there. So I'd like to think that it is not, and I think we're going to talk about Rory McIlroy and golf. I sent along a note about their ratings. This was, for the Masters, it was a compelling storyline. I really think with sports, it is about a compelling storyline. Not necessarily, I'm hoping, not necessarily just one person.
Before we get to the Masters, though, talk about compelling storyline and also a national championship. How many people saw the vice president drop the championship trophy for Ohio State football? A number of you. It's hard to describe on the radio, but J.D. Vance is there with the president, and all the players, or I assume mostly all the players from Ohio State's national championship team. He picks up the national championship trophy for the team from his home state and proceeds to drop it on the ground. My favorite part is when you do something clumsy like that, which I do all the time, is you have to decide, do you admit that you made a fool of yourself, or do you pretend that it was no big deal? He pretended it was no big deal and failed. Is that a safe characterization there, Trenny?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I do think he sort of made fun of himself.
Later.
Right?
Later.
He wasn't, but I do, yes, he basically tried to make it seem like it didn't happen, which is really hard when the trophy, and I know if you're like listening on the radio, you can't see, but it's this gigantic trophy. And then there's this picture, the one that's gone viral, of him holding like the top of the trophy and the other player holding the bottom of it, like it came undone. I'm like, oh, so not only did you drop it, but you broke the national championship trophy.
There you go. So speaking
of every day it's something with that administration.
Yeah.
So breaking something.
Can we go to I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that Rory McIlroy won McIlroy won the Masters. And so you said it was a compelling story. So should we play a little clip of him before you tell us?
Don't play the clip where he's talking. We'll play the minute. This is the only thing I like about golf.
All right.
Is on the final hole when the winner sinks a key shot, the eruption of sound, because you have to be silent until that moment. Here's the moment that McIlroy, or however you pronounce his name.
McIlroy,
thank you, the same guy, clinched the Masters Championship this weekend. Here it is.
The long journey is over. McIlroy has his masterpiece.
I mean, that's pretty great, from total silence to a total eruption. I love that.
So you said it was a compelling story. Why was it a compelling story?
Because Rory McIlroy has been trying to become only the 6th golfer in history, and the first since Tiger Woods did it in the year 2000. So it has been 25 years since anyone who has completed a career Grand Slam. So
what's that mean?
Completing a career Grand Slam means you win all 4 of the majors. So he had won the U.S. Open, the PGA, and the British Open, but he had not won the Masters. And so it had eluded him. It was his, I believe, it had been 11 years between his last major championship win and this win. He obviously has he was a young, if you look at video of him from when he won his first, I think he won 4 majors, within a couple of years, a year and a half when he first kind of sprung onto the scene. He's this chubby-faced 20-something kid. He's now in his mid-30s. He's got a wife, a child, I think maybe 2 children, and he's got a little girl for sure, Poppy, who was kind of front and center this weekend. But you could see, he even said in his post-game interview, after he hits the putt, and by the way, it was a compelling story, Marjorie, because this is the guy who has fallen apart over and over and over at the Masters, and he did it on Sunday. At one point on Sunday, he had a 5-stroke lead. It should have been easy street. He should have cruised to the Masters title, to the green jacket. And instead, he missed a 4-foot birdie putt on 18 to put it away. 4-foot par putt, excuse me. All he had to do was a 4-foot par putt on 18, which sent him into a playoff with Justin Rose, who had been the leader through the first 2 rounds. Thursday and Friday, and they had to then go play the 10th hole. So here's a guy who misses a major putt instead of a 4-foot putt, a putt that, honestly, even kind of subpar golfers should probably be able to make. The pressure was too much. Then he hits a beautiful drive on the playoff hole on 10. Then he hits his next shot into the sand. He has to wedge it out, and then he hits the putt for a birdie and the win. And it was just, he fell to his knees, and his whole body was shaking in tears. And he said it was as much relief as it was celebration. He had this monkey on his back for so long. It was incredible. It was awesome. And we love the show Full Swing on Netflix. It goes behind the scene. Yep. So it's kind of like the F1 show on Netflix. It goes behind the scenes with golfers. Yeah. And it's awesome. It's just really well done. And I really wanted Rory to win, and he did, and it was awesome.
We see these shots, Tiger Woods, when he was a little boy, he was on with Johnny Carson or something like that. And our friend
he was
Sheila,
a single-digit little boy.
Yeah. And our friend Sheila sent us a great thing. I think it was from X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, of Rory McIlroy. He's on some, is he Australian or what is it? What is his nationality? nationality?
He's Irish. He's Northern.
He's Irish.
He's from Northern Ireland.
I should have known that. Whoops. He's Irish like I am. Anyway.
Yeah. She's Marjorie
I know, that was
Egan.
bad. That was bad. Anyway, I'm making a lot of mistakes today, actually.
That's okay. Keep
But
moving.
anyway, so he's on some Irish TV show, and he's like 8 years old. And first of all, he's bouncing the golf ball on the end of it. Looked like a wedge, maybe 7 iron, 9 iron. He's bouncing like 50 times, like a basketball player that twirls. Then he's hitting the golf ball. They put a washing machine. Apparently, he practiced at home on his mother's washing machine. Opened the bottom of the washing machine. It's a front end loader, and he's hitting the ball like over and over again, from like 20 feet away, right into the washing machine. He's like 7 or 8 years old. It was great. It reminded me of Tiger Woods. I think he was like 3 or something when he was on with Johnny Carson, putting, and it was.
Do you
like
play
awesome.
golf? Your sister's a big golfer.
My sister, and my father loved to play golf.
Do you play golf?
I just started. I got clubs years ago, and then and so my husband bought me clubs this year, and I've been taking lessons. And once this big run is done, I'll probably dedicate more time to it. But if I want to see my husband, basically from April through November,
play golf.
That's horrible.
But you know what? It's funny. We're talking about
horrible, Jim. It's a wonderful lifelong
It's a wonderful
sport
thing.
We can
That's
play
what I meant.
together.
It's
we
a
talk
wonderful
about
thing.
Donald Trump all the time. We see a lot of shots of him on the golf course. I wonder why we never saw shots of his swing. And now I know why we don't see shots of his swing.
Why? You finally saw it?
Bad swing.
Is it? I thought he won a tournament last weekend.
It is a
terrible
awful swing. Yeah, good golfers, they have a beautiful swing. My sister has a beautiful swing, but he has a bad swing. So
I have to say, I don't want to destroy the mood. I don't understand the joy that people, the exultation people get from watching golf. The only thing that does it for me is they're usually beautiful
they love the
places.
Here's Roy McIlroy.
I know.
I love that, the way they whisper. They whisper. And they take away everybody's cell phones, right? No cell phones allowed.
No cell phones.
Well,
so you have to actually be immersed in the game, which is awesome.
Wait a second. And also, speaking of no cell phones, didn't we read this morning that even when you win the damn tournament and you get the green jacket, which goes to the winner, you don't even own the green jacket? You can wear it for a year. You can wear it every time you come back to the Masters, but the Masters tournament owns the green jacket, and did I get that right, or nobody cares? Nobody cares.
I don't know, but that sounds about right. That sounds very Mastersy.
Yeah, it does sound Mastersy.
Yeah, they talk about how there's a resale market in the green jackets, and I guess Arnold Palmer's jacket went for a lot of money.
How's there a resale if you can't keep the jacket?
I don't know.
Maybe Jim, you used to be able to keep it, and because of that, maybe now the Masters. I will look into that. I've not heard that, but that's. It wouldn't surprise me.
What does it say?
The value of a green jacket. Okay,
we don't have to read the whole article right now. I think we'll pass on this.
Sam
next week.
Snead wore the first green jacket in 1949.
Okay,
yeah.
fine. Okay.
And Arnold Palmer's green jacket.
I had a green jacket when I was a busboy at Grossinger's, by the way.
Guess how much a potential sale for Arnold Palmer's Masters green jacket
Nobody
went
cares
for
about
in
that either.
2022.
Who cares?
How much? How much?
I'm going to guess $2 million.
$3.65 million.
Wow.
As I repeat,
a lot of people have a lot of money that they just don't know what to do with.
That's
you know
incredible.
What? You can donate to my MS Run the US run.
By the way, I meant to say that at the end.
$3.6 million.
How do people find that site for your incredibly inspirational run that you're doing in honor of an aunt, right? Are you not?
Yes, my Aunt Sandy, or as you guys say on the East Coast, my Aunt Sandy.
Yeah.
Which sounds so much fancier than the way we say it.
How do people find
that?
The
easiest way is to go to my Instagram, and I have it linked right in my bio. I also have a QR code. I should just really stop being cheap and change the URL to like Trenny Runs for MS or something, because that would make it a lot easier.
Okay, before you go here, I think everybody knows who knows your relationship with us or watches you. You've done a lot of Olympics work, and we were reading a story this morning about how there's great concern that because we have basically given the middle finger to virtually the whole world, that the World Cup, which is supposed to be in Canada, Mexico, and the United States, and obviously Canada and Mexico aren't loving us. 2 years, that's 2026, next year. The Olympics is 2028. Is there concern about your NBC sistern and brethren about what's going to happen if Trump continues to alienate even our friends, forget our non-friends? Or
I mean, I think the biggest concern is that athletes won't feel comfortable coming here.
That's a big concern.
That they won't feel safe. So what does that do?
How
to
horrible
the World
is that?
Cup?
How horrible?
Right. Does that dilute the talent pool? Will athletes boycott? I mean, we're seeing all of these stories about how Canadian tourists are not wanting to come to the U.S. And maybe now European tourists don't want to come here. Why should we give their money? Why should we give our money to you when we could go to Canada or other European countries? So what happens if that then extends to full teams in World Cup and in an Olympic year? Because we have the next Summer Olympics is here in LA. And then, of course, the World Cup, the Men's World Cup is here next summer. I think that most likely, Jim, how many horrible, worse atrocities have we seen across the world where athletes have still gone and competed in Russia? I'm trying to think. I mean, there were concerns about Brazil, Qatar for the World Cup, and everyone still went. So I think when push comes to shove, athletes will compete because you only get to do it every 4 years. But are you going to have spectators? Are you going to have people fill the stands? Are you going to sell seats? I mean, that should be a real question and a real concern.
We'll continue to talk about this. Gail in Brookline texts and says, Jim, you're a liar. Vance did not drop the trophy. You are one of the nastiest people. Now, while it is true that I am one of the nastiest people, he did drop the trophy, Gail.
He did. It's all over.
He did. It's on video. Check it out.
Yeah.
Goodbye, Gail. Thank you. Hey, Trenny, it's great to see you. Be well.
All right. See you guys in person
see you,
next week.
Thank you, Trenny. We've been speaking with Trenny Casey, NBC Sports Boston anchor reporter. Coming up after the noon news, we're going to talk with John King. We're going to talk with him about what's happening at the El Salvador prison, what's happening with tariffs, what's happening with Harvard. Are we talking about Harvard? I'm not sure. Anyway, John King is next. D.C. centered. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
You can make a lasting impact on the station that has provided local news and conversation throughout the years by naming GBH in your estate plans. Be part of the legacy of public radio in New England. Learn more at wgbh.org/planning.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts. BSU's skilled graduates are recruited by today's industry leaders, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library, with Donald Trump continuing to operate like a vindictive king, deporting legal residents without trial, ignoring constitutional checks on his power. We'll talk with CNN's John King about what Americans can and should be turning to for hope that our institutions are still functioning.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we'll end by opening phone and text lines to talk about friendships. With the news, your job, the kids, the rest, it can be hard to prioritize friends. Is a calendar note a good way to make hangouts happen, or is spontaneity the thing that keeps our friendships alive and thriving rather than another chore to check off? Your calls, your texts are next on the third hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. Lawyers for the Trump administration are back in federal court today. The White House says it cannot bring back a migrant who was wrongfully deported from Maryland to El Salvador. NPR's Jimena Bustillo reports that's despite a number of federal court orders.
Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia was deported by mistake to El Salvador last month. A Maryland judge ordered the Trump administration to take steps to facilitate his return, a decision later supported by all 9 Supreme Court justices. but President Trump and Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele both said they have no plans to return him. A federal judge is expected to raise more questions today about whether the administration is doing enough to, quote, facilitate Abrego Garcia's return. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News, Washington.
President Trump's trade war is taking a toll on U.S. exporters. NPR's Scott Horsley reports in a post on social media, Trump accused China of reneging on a deal to buy Boeing aircraft.
Bloomberg reports that China's government has ordered airlines in that country not to accept any more jets from Boeing. That's the latest move in the U.S.-China trade war. Boeing stock fell. Bank of America shares opened higher as the bank reported better-than-expected profits for the most recent quarter. CEO Brian Moynihan says bank forecasters are not projecting a U.S. recession this year, although he acknowledged what he called a changing economy in the future. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Jury selection is underway in Manhattan today, where disgraced Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein is on trial once again. He's facing numerous charges, including rape and sexual assault. Ilya Meritz reports it's the second time Weinstein is being tried for sex crimes in New York.
Weinstein was convicted in 2020 on felony sex crimes charges and sentenced to 23 years, but an appeals court overturned that verdict last year, ruling that the trial judge allowed some testimony which the jury should not have heard. In this new trial, 3 women are expected to testify against him. Weinstein is 73 and has been in ill health. He's pleaded not guilty. He has a separate conviction in California for rape and sexual assault. For many years, Weinstein was a major hitmaker in Hollywood, with credits ranging from Pulp Fiction to Good Will Hunting. Jury selection is expected to take several days. Ilya Meritz, NPR News, New York.
Today is tax day, and millions of Americans are up against a deadline at midnight to file their returns. If you can't file your information by today, the IRS says you should apply for an automatic 6-month extension. Some people, however, can get an extra day or two to file if they live in Maine, Massachusetts, or Washington, D.C., due to observed holidays. On Wall Street, the Dow was up 32 points, the Nasdaq Composite up 10. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Today is One Boston Day, marking the 12th anniversary of the 2013 marathon bombings and honoring victims and survivors. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu was at an event near the marathon finish line on Boylston Street this morning.
Throughout the day, we encourage everyone to carry out your acts of kindness, get involved, say hi to a stranger. Just remember that we're part of the same community and that we have each other's backs.
Meantime, this year's Boston Marathon set for next Monday, April 21st. And today is April 15th, otherwise known as Tax Day to most of us with the IRS. While the IRS says it has already received well over 100 million federal income tax returns, tens of millions more will be sent in today. And make sure your info is correct.
Hi, honey. Gather up the dependents. I'm starved.
The what? Have you finished the taxes yet?
Of course, my lovely 223-7.
Honey, my social security number starts with 233. You haven't mailed the taxes yet, have you?
Be accurate. Just one wrong name or social security number could delay your U.S. income tax refund.
Dad, Nathan said he's a bigger deduction than I am.
Did not. Did two.
Enough. Unless you filed an extension, you have until midnight tonight to get those taxes in the mail. 66 degrees in Boston right now. We are looking for a high of maybe 68. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from Drexel University, whose cooperative education program positions students to explore future careers and discover their ideal profession before graduation. This is experiential education. More at drexel.edu.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan enjoying more of our lawyer-approved music so we don't violate any copyrights. It's the same show, John King, but it's a little different lead-in. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by Milk Street's Christopher Kimball, who's got this gorgeous book of Italian cooking, the NAACP's Michael Curry, Harvard's Juliet Kayyem, and more back here on Friday. Next Tuesday we won't be, though, because it's the cleanup after the marathon. Hello again, Jim.
I just want to say, when Christopher Myers and Joanne Chang from their brand new opening today, Flower Boston Common. We're here. We're raving about the hot dog and the soft serve.
Great.
Did you try the muffin, the
Yeah,
Embrace
the
muffin?
whole thing. I mean, the whole thing. She's just a great.
Check it out. Just opening
spectacular.
today, right in the Common, right off Tremont Street near Embrace Boston. We're joined now on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, the man behind the reporting project for the last year or so all over the map. John, it's good to see you. Welcome.
Happy Tuesday. I haven't had lunch yet. You're making me hungry.
Yeah,
you don't
oh my
even
God.
know. Next time you're in town, check it out.
Yeah, well, you've probably been to Flower Bakery, but this is a new venture for them, the hot dog business with the soft serve, but it's great and a great location. So anyway, John, a lot of us got kind of freaked out when we watched the news conference with President Trump and President Bukele from El Salvador, almost laughing about building more prisons down there. In El Salvador, the president was talking about sending Americans convicted of crime to prisons in El Salvador. And the fact that we seem to have somewhat of a constitutional crisis kind of deal with the Supreme Court saying that the Trump administration has to facilitate the removal of Mr. Garcia, the man who was sent there by mistake. And Trump's cabinet was lying about it. They don't seem to be caring what the Supreme Court said. So that was a long question. But
what is the question?
What does he make of it?
Oh,
I think the question is: are we standing and are we kind of teetering at the edge of a cliff? Right?
Yeah.
I think that's the question, and I think we're going to get the answer. And I think on any number of these questions. You have seen leaders in the past at every level who want to test, where's the line, right? I want to walk up to the line. I want to test where the line is. I don't think that's what we have here. We have a president who has decided he wants to move the lines. And so, he's going to cross them and see what happens. And so to sit with, again, I would urge everyone at home, I had this conversation, I think, every Tuesday now for the last few weeks. Who do we want to be as a country? What do we want to be? And so when you see your president bring yet another authoritarian dictator into the Oval Office as opposed to the traditional U.S. allies and celebrate them, celebrate democracies, celebrate people who honor and respect human rights. That's question number one. Then the constitutional question. This is a Supreme Court that unanimously, remember, this is a conservative court. This is a conservative court with several Trump appointees and several other Republican appointees who we know tend to reflexively favor presidential power. And yet they said, no, you wrongly deported this gentleman, get him back. Facilitate his return. And the Trump administration is saying no. And the president of El Salvador says, I won't do it. And so I do think this is headed back to the Supreme Court. And so, again, that to me, given the composition of this court, that presents, I think, a defining question for the legal system and the traditional balance of power between our three allegedly equal branches of government. But I think it's also going to, I hope it stirs a conversation. Not my job to take sides, but I hope this stirs a conversation among everybody. Not just people who didn't vote for Donald Trump, not for people who held their nose and voted for Donald Trump, but for everybody to think about, wait a minute, what are we doing here?
John, stay on this for a second, because you did travel all over the map and spoke to so many real people in these incredibly candid discussions you had. I know you don't have a poll in front of you after yesterday's meeting. Do people care about this? I mean, I worry, as much as I worry about Mr. Garcia and his family, I worry that caring people, which I think is at least a majority in this country, don't care about this enough. Both the human tragedy and the constitutional violation part of this. Do you think I'm wrong?
I don't think you're wrong. I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that, in the sense that people are really busy and people are really stressed, and people don't spend as much attention on the details always as we do, because we get paid to do this. And we're passionate about it. And so we're reading emails until midnight, and then we're starting again at 8 a.m. and you have amazing panelists and guests on your program to talk these things through. If you're a working family or a working mom, maybe you're not spending as much time on the news. I do think certain things do break through. Elon Musk has broken through.
Yes.
And I do think, I think this one, I'm really fascinated. I'm going back to Arizona to a voter group I have there next week.
Oh, great.
And to talk about this very question. My next stop is actually Canada this week to do something on the Canadian elections, which is a whole other ball of wax when it comes to Trump. But I do think, I do think that whether you call them low information voters, or I think it's less engaged people, because they're busy with their lives, they're not following every last detail. So they hear all this screaming and shouting and alarm in Washington, and maybe it makes no sense to them out in America. But these are fundamental. These are not like taxes and spending decisions. These are not one or two controversial personnel appointments. These are fundamental questions about who we are as a country. And so if they're not breaking through as quickly as they are in your conversations and here in Washington, D.C., I would put my money on they will break through eventually. And I do think, we talked a little bit about this last week, I do think you're starting to see Democrats get, I'll say, a little bit more of a rhythm in trying to figure out how to raise these issues.
Well, how about Republicans? Marjorie was going to ask you when we got to tariffs about how the Republicans are reacting in light of the fact that many of the businesses and individuals who they represent are being affected in a negative way. Historically, Republicans were seen as the law and order party. All the things that flow from that is what, to me at least, seems like a clear violation of a Supreme Court directive. Is there at least a critical mass of Republicans on Capitol Hill who are troubled by this? I know there's vacation time, but do they care about this or no?
You know the answer. Do they care about it? Probably. Many of them do.
No.
Are they willing to talk publicly about it?
No.
That has been the timidity, cowardice, call it what you will. And so the Supreme Court issued its first decision. One of the Trump administration has taken advantage of what a lot of legal scholars do say is somewhat vague wording in that decision. But now it's going to get back there. It's going to get back there. We're going to see what happens. And to your point, look, what's the old ad? This is not your father's Oldsmobile. This is not your father's Republican Party. This is Donald Trump's Republican Party. Remember when they used to call themselves constitutional conservatives? That was the foundation of the Republican Party. So I think that test, Jim, is right around the corner. They have failed to even ask good questions. You don't have to be critical to ask good questions. We can all understand how politics works, and I'm afraid of a primary, or I'm afraid if he's going to get in my face, or I'm afraid, the phones are going to light up at my house, or my, all the quote unquote aggressive MAGA people are going to be screaming at my children. I get all that, and I have grace for all of that. But if you are the party of constitutional conservatism, let's see when this case gets back to the Supreme Court and what the justices decide. And let's see if you actually do stand and believe in something, or if you just believe in Trump.
Talking to John McCain.
I think, and I could be wrong, but I think there is going to be a feeling in your home on the tariffs because of small businesses. I saw John Kennedy from Louisiana, the senator from down there. I don't think,
Republican.
Yeah, a Trump guy, I thought, expressing some concern about the tariffs. And you hear a lot of stories now, and I'm sure they're rippling through neighborhoods of people that their small business has depended on having a reasonable price to pay for their goods being made in China. Now we have 145% tariff. So I think that's a problem. I think.
You are starting to see more, I'll call them ripples or ruffles or even complaints about that, the economic issue, without a doubt. It has been interesting that, again, when Trump sounds tough on immigration, that's what his voters want. And I think when they learn more of the details about what we were just talking about in El Salvador and all of that, and court, defying judges, that could be a different issue as that sinks in down the road. On this tariff issue, I think it gets at two things. Number one, a lot of the businesses back home who are traditionally supporters of those Republican lawmakers are saying this is bad for us. So the people who have a seat at the table, the bigger businesses, the farmers, I don't say that critically, but people with influence in the community, a lot of them are saying, Senator, Congressman, this is bad for us. And it's been inconsistent. It's been all over the place. It's been like a yo-yo. Even whether I like it or don't like it, I can't plan because he keeps changing his mind and making things nuts. That's number one. Number two, the number one reason he won the election was that people were PO'd. Yep. You know what I mean by PO'd, yep. About the cost of living under the Biden presidency. And we don't have to argue whether that was Joe Biden's fault or not, but that's just coming out of COVID. Inflation went up with the global economy. People were pissed about it, and they thought Donald Trump would make the economy better and lower costs. So if tariffs are, number one, angering the business community and the farming community, not this, I'm generalizing a bit there because there are exceptions. There are people who like the tariffs within those groups. But if a plurality, a majority of those people are saying this hurts us, and then average Americans are still paying the same or even more for certain things, that's a double whammy on Trump. And I think you are starting to see that piece of the jitters going from private to muted to more loud public criticism is real.
Do you know anybody in the world in which you travel who thinks they have any idea what Trump's going to do on tariffs in the next week, month, 90 days? Anybody?
No, his own team. Look, Jim, intellectual consistency is not a thread line of this administration. Policy consistency is not a thread line of this administration. And this idea that, they say that this is exactly how he planned it, right? That he lays it out there, then he pulls it back. He lays it out there and he pulls it back. And this is the art of the deal, they say. Forgive me. Just forgive me. It has been sort of an ad hoc. I'm not an economist. I don't pretend to be anywhere near that smart. But I do talk to, whether it's small business people like Marjorie was mentioning, or, CEOs of big companies who are whether they agree or disagree. Well, there are a lot of people out there who think targeted tariffs in certain sectors might be a good thing. There are a lot of people out there who say, Trump is right big picture when he says American manufacturing has gone in a huge decline for the last 25 years or more and could use some help and some boost. I think Joe Biden actually got a lot of money appropriated to try to reinvest in American manufacturing. So it's something that Trump could have built on, even if you wanted to philosophically change it a little bit. I don't want the government so involved. I want it to be more private sector. I want it to be more loan guarantees as opposed to direct government aid. We can have that conversation, but that's not the conversation we're having. We're having a president who has decided to essentially rip the steel out of the building that is the framework of the global economy because he doesn't like things and he wants to be the center of attention.
Well, I want to be clear. So you don't think this is four-dimensional chess, as I keep hearing as dependent? Don't see it that way?
I will give him some credit, and he deserves credit in the idea that he has he deserves. I always say he's not intellectually consistent. He has been consistent on protectionism and tariffs going back to the 1970s. It's one of the issues when he was a Democrat, when he was an independent, before he was a Republican. He talked about this.
Right.
The application of it is what is dizzying to people, even people who tend to generally agree with him that we could use more tariffs or at least a fairer trade policy, whether you use tariffs as the weapon in that or something else, that we need a more even playing field when it comes to trade. But the inconsistency has them all, again, even people who are generally on his side, they have whiplash because they don't know what to do. Especially when you think about businesses you talk about buying products in China. Think about the end run there, right? That's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, sometimes even longer out if you're buying a big product. If you're going to build a building, if you're going to build a new building, in Copley Square, that's a several years project. Think about the seaport. Think about the seaport and how it was transformed in our lifetime. That doesn't happen you don't sit down on a Monday and say we're going to do this, and then Friday you're done. These are months and years of buying things and laying out your supply chain and your workforce. And it's impossible to do right now, everybody says, because they don't know the tariff rules on Tuesday might not be the tariff rules on Friday.
We're talking to John King. Can we go to my home state of Pennsylvania? Not too long ago, there was an assassination attempt directed at Donald Trump. A couple of days ago, an assassination attempt directed at the governor. Is this something based on what you know? I saw the local DA interviewed on CNN last night. Is this being viewed as an isolated incident or as something scarier? Not that it's not scary enough on its own. If people have seen the video of that one room in the governor's mansion, which is burned to the ground. I'm sorry, Governor Shapiro. What do we know so far, John King?
Well, we know that there's a suspect in play, and I think it's, I don't want to get out ahead of investigators, but I think that what you asked the question, the idea of, is this an isolated incident? By everything I've seen in the reporting so far, this suspect is someone who hatched this plan. He hatched this plan, not part of a big group or conspiracy thing. So isolated incident, yes, but does it come at a time when we seem to be too much on the edge? That our political rhetoric seems too much on the edge? That political violence seems to be a more I'm not going to say the word acceptable. I just did. I'm fighting myself trying to find the right words. But are more people thinking that that's the way to do it, as opposed to have a protest or organize to vote the guy out or find some way to air your displeasure with somebody? I do think that whether it's the horrible assassination attempt on then candidate, now President Donald Trump, or now this to the governor of Pennsylvania, that there's just too many of these to say, oh, well, that's just a one-off. There's a tension and a inclination toward political violence that just seems to be a lot more common than it has. I've been doing this for 40 years, and I had not had these conversations before, the last year or two.
Talking to John King from CNN.
So Harvard's a big deal to us in Boston, because, and especially if you are the opinion that these universities should stand up. But that's not something I think that's going to hurt Trump at all, because I think there's probably a lot of animus.
It's the lead story in the Washington Post and the New York Times this morning, by the way.
Well, it is, but you think about really who reads the New York Times and the Washington Post.
Okay.
It's probably people that are very into the news, and I just wonder if there's political fallout from this. I would imagine that a lot of people are hostile towards some of these schools.
I think that especially Trump's base is, there has been, I think, with some nuggets of truth from time to time, and then it gets hyped and exaggerated that these are the elitists, these are the people who think they're smarter than you, these are the people who want to run your life and tell you that you're deplorable and things like that. So I think you're right that is the Trump base upset that Trump's going to fight with Harvard, and and whose side is the Trump base going to take when Harvard says no and Trump says now he's. But here's where I get back to the conversation we had earlier, and I think where a lot of these things do connect. Is that, forgive me, I know it's said by a lot of people now, but this is not normal.
No, it is not normal.
And so you have a president of the United States now that Harvard is defying him, saying that he is going to consider taxing it as a political entity. And so it's a president who's constantly looking for ways to punish people who disagree with him. And that's not normal. He can give a speech. He can give a speech and say, I think those Harvard people are crazy woke elitists if he wants. We have a First Amendment, right? Whether you agree or disagree with that. But the idea that, okay, this is a private institution that disagrees with me, and they can cut the federal funding if they want, if they can do it legally. I mean, that'll get challenged in the courts as well. But he has levers at his disposal. But the idea then that I'm going to find other ways, I'm going to tax you, I'm going to punish you. That gets back to the conversation I started with, that I do think that a lot of these things, they're very different issues, but they fall under the umbrella of maybe many of you wanted a more powerful president. Maybe many of you think the presidency has been weakened by judges and by Congress or whatever. Is this what you wanted? Did you want it this powerful?
Well, I think when you can separate the so-called elitists at Harvard from probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest hospital in the country, Mass General Brigham and Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, and all the research that this money enables to happen there. I mean, this isn't, to supply, French 101 or something to the freshmen going to Harvard.
But even if it was, who's the leading member of the House of Representatives critical of Harvard? Harvard graduate Elise Stefanik.
Yeah, she talked about the moral rot.
Who talks about the elitist institutions like Yale University?
J.D.
Vance.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just, and if you don't know, Stefanik went to Harvard and Vance went to Yale. Ted Cruz went to Harvard.
Josh Hawley.
Exactly.
Yeah, a lot of them went to these so-called elite Ivy League schools. President Trump did himself. It's not Harvard and Yale, but UPenn, your alma mater.
I've heard of University of Pennsylvania.
No slouch school. So there you go. But because I think that more and more people are saying this, what has anti-Semitism alleged, because I don't think it's about anti-Semitism at all, but I think there's anti-Semitism at these schools, but I don't think that's what this is about. What has anti-Semitism got to do with funding tuberculosis or funding AIDS research or funding, the next pandemic cure? You know what I mean? So maybe that touches people. I don't know. I worry about that a lot. And I worry because of the lying that I saw yesterday in the press conference with the president of El Salvador and our own president, the lying from the Attorney General, et cetera, that people buy the lies. We get texters all the time that buy the lies.
The lies, again, raised in Dorchester, Massachusetts, my parents who said you respect the presidency, this is it's not normal. Repeatedly sitting in the Oval Office, the temple, if you will, of our democracy, lying.
Yeah.
I hate to say it. It pains me to say it. I know Trump supporters out there think, oh, we all love saying he's a liar. No, I don't love saying he's a liar, but he lies. He lies, and the people around him lie constantly, and they know they're doing it. They're doing it for a reason. They're doing it to keep their people believing what they believe. So again, would it be a bad thing for smart, thoughtful people to come in and analyze every dollar of government spending at a time we're running these huge deficits, and to meet with hospitals and say, can you do this more efficiently, or can we rejigger this a little bit? I don't think anybody would have a huge problem with that. It's when you come in on a Monday and say, we're cutting all your funding because we don't like you. Or because one of you looked at me cross-eyed, or one of you did something, or somebody's mad about something, as opposed to having a process that says, okay, we have to make some tough decisions, and you might be part of them. So let's start a conversation about how we're going to handle these things. That's not happening. It's something very different.
John, speaking of cutting funding, we read, I guess it was the New York Times first place, I saw it last night, that Trump, when Congress returns, is going to request that Congress claw back, meaning demand the return of outstanding funds, $1 billion roughly, from NPR and the corporation and PBS under the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. It needs a majority in both the House and the Senate. The House margin is really narrow. I have spoken to, through the years, including when I used to spend time in Washington, to a lot of conservatives who say, I'm not crazy about the message all the time, but it's the only outlet that the people in my district are able to listen to or watch. How much trouble, based on the reality as you see it, is funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting once Trump submits that request at the end of the month?
Yeah, this has been a sort of a dog whistle or a whipping call for certain Republicans for years and years and years, and you knew it was never going to get close to the finish line, right? So I'm not saying you don't take it seriously, but you didn't. You knew the math wasn't going to be there. I do think it's worth watching, but I also think, Jim, the issues like this are a great test now of, in the first weeks of the administration, Donald Trump had a House Republican majority as narrow as they come. That was pretty much lockstep. Mm-hmm. You have seen, because of a number of factors, some blowback to Musk, some blowback to talk about, getting rid of Social Security, which is connected to Musk, or changing Social Security, which is connected to Musk, just to the cost of living, to some of these authoritarian things, that you have now a growing number of House Republicans who are in vulnerable districts who are like, okay, you've turned quicksand into like a pit of quicksand now. It was always difficult for me, and now you're making it even harder on me. So you're going to get those votes. If you're trying to do something like that, can you get a majority in the House? I think those are the issues that, if the Speaker decides to bring something like that to the floor, if Donald Trump demands he bring something like that to the floor, I think you'll start to see I think we're into testing time, is the point I'm trying to make, on some of these issues where a lot of the moderates would prefer not to cast those votes. Under some circumstances, they might have taken one for the team, if you will, the team Trump. If Trump said, I need you to do this, I think that we're at, I think, a crossroads of testing for those tougher votes right now, because they're starting to look, I know 2026 seems a long way off, they're starting to look at it, and based on where they are right now, thinking, you know what, it was going to be hard to begin with, and now he's making it really, really, really hard.
Yeah, before you go away, you're the best person I asked this. We only have a few seconds left. So the Red Sox lose 2 games out of 3 to the worst team in the history of baseball. That's the Chicago White Sox. And here's my question. The next game they play is with Tampa Bay last night, and they only lost by a score of 16-1. Is that a step in the right direction, would you say?
16-1.
John, does that show improvement? What would you say?
I think they need to kick a lot more field goals. Our baseball team needs a kicker. They were supposed to be a lot better, and they look a lot worse at the moment.
Yeah, field goals. Adam Vinatieri, wherever you are, call home. Hey, John, it's great to see you. John King, thanks so much for your time.
You, John.
We appreciate it always.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
John King.
We've been speaking with John King, CNN's chief national correspondent, the man behind the reporting project All Over the Map. Coming up after a quick break, we open the phone and text lines to talk about friendship. If you want to see your friends in person more often, how do you spur the group chat into action? Does a calendar commitment sacrifice spontaneity in a meaningful way? Jim knows a lot about that. We'll ask you next on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Last year, during the presidential election, a veterans group started holding nonpartisan public meetings at brew pubs.
I think it's helpful to have veterans in the room because we don't start a conversation with who cares more about America. It's just sort of assumed.
The need has not gone away, so they're continuing the tradition. I'm Elsa Chang, Pints and Patriotism on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, outlier author Malcolm Gladwell, and geopolitical economist Pippa Malmgren. BostonSpeakers.org. And Gentle Giant Moving and Storage Company, offering local, long-distance, office, and piano moving, with 23 locations throughout New England and across the country. More information at gentlegiant.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Dregan, Jim Browdy, live from the library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. You know that whoever our colleague has just mentioned, Ken Burns, everything that Ken Burns and Sarah Botstein, who were with us from 11:30 to 12, are doing the next week is sold out, including the GBH event at Symphony Hall tomorrow night. But if you want to hear a wonderful 30 minutes with both of them, when does our stuff get posted? Oh, it's up there now, Jamie says. They really were both terrific, talking about American Revolution, which is their 6-part documentary, 12 hours, that's going to come out in November. They were terrific. Again, go to gbhnews.org and go find us, and you'll hear 30 minutes. It's pretty inspiring. So friendship and social connections are key determinants of health. Study after study finds that staying connected with friends as you age improves mental and physical well-being, particularly in stressful times like these. But as soon as our moms stop scheduling play dates for us, things somehow start to get a little more complicated. Adulthood increasingly means putting friend dates on the calendar weeks, even months in advance, often going through a grueling process of back and forth to align schedules or not bothering at all. COVID and our political divide seems to have made everything that was bad even worse. So the lines are open at 877-301-8970. Is this just part of being an adult who wants to have friends? Is there a better, more natural, spontaneous way to stay connected with friends? Or do we just need to adjust our expectations about what having friendships means as an adult? Friendships and you in the age of you-know-who at 877-301-8970. If you have tips or tricks about staying connected with friends in 2025, we would love to hear them at 877-301-8970. What's your trick?
Well, I don't have any, but you do. I'm very excited. I wish I was doing what you do. Don't you get together like once every 6 weeks or something with a bunch of guys?
There are 4 other, it's men.
Men.
Who, by the way, they've talked about inviting you, so it's not intended to be a gender-exclusive kind of club.
I like gender-exclusive ones, though.
Okay, this is a gender-exclusive. The 5 of us eat dinner. It's not that often. It's maybe 4 times a year.
Yeah, I think that's great.
And it's torturous, actually, to plan a thing to get everybody's schedules aligned. But you know what we do, which is actually quite wonderful? If one person at the last minute can't make it, you know what we do?
You go anyway.
We cancel it.
Oh, that's terrible.
No, it's not terrible, because our feeling is we're a fivesome of sorts, and we like being together. So that is one thing I do.
You're supposed to do the Calendly thing. Did you see this? Calendly.
What the hell is that?
Well, it's a strategy. This woman talks about how she does this for professional obligations, but she uses the tool Calendly for clients to book time with her. And then she does the same thing with her friends.
Well, obviously, if you schedule something, you put it in your calendar,
That's right. Well, then you don't cancel last minute like a deadbeat person at the last minute. You don't do that. You put it in your calendar. It's your first priority. You have to make it a commitment, and you got to do it. So that's what she talks about, setting a standing dinner date, maybe once a month or once every 2 months or something like that with friends. Or if you want to do something less dramatic, to commit to a weekly call or text. I have a friend. I call her a people collector.
Who is she?
She's from Memphis. I've talked to you about her a lot. Her name is Ann.
Yeah.
And she, I know her from Cape Cod.
Yeah.
And she is somebody that is a people collector. She has friends in all these different areas, work, family, social, neighbors, stuff like that. Well, she told me once that she spends about an hour a day contacting different friends.
That's pretty great.
Staying in
How
contact with them.
much do you spend every day contacting friends?
Like 2 minutes.
That's it, exactly.
You know what the problem is?
No.
It's probably the same thing as you working too much.
Yeah.
That cuts
You know what
down on
another
your
key
friendship.
is, which I don't do, but I have friends who do, is if you have a friend you're particularly fond of who makes your life a lot better, and we all have some of those.
Yes, I have wonderful friends.
Okay, good. So what you do is when you finish an encounter with that friend, you know what you do before you leave?
You set another date.
You schedule the next one.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I think that's brilliant.
Now, Jamie wrote us a note. Is this you, Jamie, wrote this a note? This is an interesting question. I mentioned that in my little fivesome of men, we have talked about inviting Marjorie. And he wants to know, apparently we decided never to extend an invitation.
Never extend an invitation.
Actually, you want to know the truth is? The invitation is in the mail.
It's in the mail.
It's in the mail. Check your mail.
But you know another way that a lot of people do their catching up? I mean, I do a lot of phone calling when I used to walk the dog, or if I just walk myself, or I'm driving in the car. I do a lot of
You know
phone
what the problem
calls.
is? Even though you're an incredibly fit person, I talk to you occasionally when you're on the phone. You're out of
breathing
breath.
heavily.
No, you're out of breath. I mean, it's not fun.
I know. Well, I try not to walk up a hill when I'm on the conversation with people. Maybe I do that with
I do better if I'm talking to friends when I'm lying down, because that way my breathing is fine. And by the way, in a moment of seriousness, what I said at the beginning is totally true. Every study I've ever read on friendship, or every article about every study, says it's better for both your mental health and your physical health. And the value of that is exponentially higher when you're living in a stressful time, which we all are. So we want to know what your tricks are about friendship. Do you value them? If you value them, how do you make a connection with your friends happen? And if you've got a trick kind of thing, like I mentioned a minute ago, where some people schedule the next one at the end of the current one, share that with us at 877-301-8970 is the
Kristen
number.
from Cambridge. Let's start with you. Thanks for calling.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi, my name is Tristan. Tristan with a T.
Can I tell you, we haven't gotten anybody's name right in about a month, so it doesn't. We apologize.
No worries.
Sorry.
No worries at all. It's such a pleasure to be on the show.
We're thrilled to have you.
You guys all the time.
Thank you.
I'm a 25-year-old graduate student who lives in Cambridge, and many of my friends, I think, like a lot of people my age, are spread out throughout the Northeast or throughout the country. I come from Western Massachusetts, and I have friends in New York, friends back home in Amherst. And one really valuable way that I have found is helpful for keeping in touch, but also feeling like I have a community, even if it's kind of extended throughout the country, is through a simple kind of conference call that I've arranged with my friends a couple times a week. And many times I'll be on the phone with someone and get a call from another friend and end up just merging the calls kind of spontaneously. And, albeit it's a digital kind of connection, but it's a way that makes me feel like I have friends, right in my pocket, as cliche as that might be to say. And it's been a hugely helpful way for me to, get through my work in graduate school while feeling like I have this community.
That is a beautiful phone call.
That is.
And a fabulous story. Tristan, call us again. I love that. Isn't that a great idea? And by the way, Tristan's, I should have asked him, but it's obvious because he said that one person called and they patched him in. Unlike my dinner deal, not everybody can be there. You just talk to whoever you talk to. Would you do that kind of thing?
I would love to. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. Here's somebody who says, I check the obituaries every day to see if something new has happened to a friend. That's terrible. Horrible. And then here's a young mom who says, I found the best way to make and keep friends is to get a dog. Dogs have to be walked anyway, so the time is built into each day. I walk with friends at a minimum of once a week. We walk and talk for an hour. We all have young kids, busy lives, but it still works because we won't bail out on our dogs. I mean, dog walking is a great opportunity. Or some people I knew a friend of mine that they were in a walking group when they would walk around the Boston College Reservoir like a certain time every
You do
week.
that, don't you?
But it's by myself. I should be in a group. But I'm walking around listening to podcasts, Jim.
So speaking of friends, I can't believe Marjorie hasn't forced me to tell the story, but I will. A great journalist died maybe 20 years ago. His name was Alan Lupo.
That's right.
And there was a wonderful memorial for him at BU. I don't know what that church is called there, whatever it was.
I don't know. Morse Chapel, maybe?
And it's a place with maybe 1,000 people. Yeah. Ultimately, it filled up. There wasn't a seat. But at the beginning, there were very few people before it started. And I sat in the back row because I had to leave from my other job at NECN. And I'm sitting in the back row, maybe only a third full at this point. And a columnist who used to work at the Globe, who you know quite well, who should remain unnamed, walks by with all her friends from the Globe, sees me sitting by myself in the back row and says loud enough for everybody to hear, "Oh, there's Jim Browdy, sitting with all his friends." That was...
I thought it was a great line.
I thought it was a pretty good line, too.
Yeah, she's pretty clever, isn't she?
That was pretty clever.
Yeah, let's go.
It's good. I've gotten over it. It's a pretty obvious thing, I think.
I know you've been telling this story for 20 years,
I know.
Jim.
I love it.
Karen and Wayland, what do you think, Karen?
Hello, Karen and Wayland.
Hey, good afternoon, guys.
You too.
Thanks so much for talking about this.
Sure.
I just wanted to share my story quickly because this is kind of all I think and write about all day long.
Great.
We actually, I just started a new company. It's called Purposely Social. But the reason why I started it was because we had a massive after-school. Purposely Social, yeah. It's a mobile application, but its genesis is from solving the after-school care crisis in Wayland about 2 years ago. I had to quit my C-suite job because we had close to zero after-school care from the district here. And after quitting my job and saying, hey, I'm going to solve this problem. Who else doesn't have after-school care? The next day I had 75 email addresses from moms in town who were all suffering in silence. It was a wild experience, but we built a grassroots community of which really did not exist. We lived these atomized lives going back and forth to Boston all day. And I realized in the 7 months I spent building a community, solving the crisis, opening 2 new programs, that, wow, this existed because we don't have each other and we need each other. That's
great.
And that's really where this new company came from, and helping busy, stressed parents make it easy to quickly and easily make plans with friends, to double down on seeing each other and walking, seeing each other and going to yoga. We have to kind of habit stack, and that's what we're all about.
And that's what Purposely Social does?
Yeah, exactly. So you guys could go in and pick 3 or 4 friends you want to spend time with and click match availability, and we'll surface times when everybody's free. Done.
That is fabulous.
That is a great idea. One of the things that's kind of sad, because my kids are grown up now, is I used to hang around with a lot of the parents of the school, my kids that were, the parents of kids are in my kids' school or preschool, and then you kind of lose track of them down the road. But when your kids are little, the play date friends and all that kind of thing, Karen?
Hey, Karen, before you go away, is that a Wayland only thing or no?
No, definitely not. We are we are in Metro West mostly. Yeah, and we're partnering with other small businesses to deliver social experiences to busy adults. So
love it. Purposely Social.
Check
it out. Karen, call us again. Thanks. I love that idea. Thank you very much.
877-301-8970 is the number.
Do you go out of your way? I mean, am I allowed to say out loud you're fairly disorganized? Is that a safe assumption? You are are you the setter-upper in friend things, or do friends contact you and you set them up? They set them up.
Usually I call.
You do?
I call more than, or they call me, or text, but usually I call. I don't really.
Meaning you're an initiator.
Well, a lot of my friends are not nearby. A lot of my friends have moved out of Boston.
Oh.
Yeah, they moved
Where
to the
are
burbs. Well, they're further away,
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sad. It really is. It's really sad.
It is sad.
You thought of moving to the burbs?
I feel very sorry
or not?
for myself.
No. That is really horrible.
Yeah, they don't live that far away, but they're not like next door.
Do you know what I learned in the last couple of days, which may be useful to you? Texts and phone calls work beyond the town that you're in.
That's right.
You can actually text somebody in a suburb.
I'm still close with my freshman college roommate.
That is incredible, by the way.
I'm still friendly with her. I'm still friendly with women from my high school, 2 women from my high school. So we talk in the phone.
You still friendly with that college person who wrote the book about you and your boyfriend naked back to back in Hawaii?
We were not naked back to back in Hawaii.
I read the book. You were naked back to back.
As a matter of fact, her son is a big filmmaker, and he's up studying at Harvard.
He is?
And she came up, and we had a lovely weekend meeting.
You did?
Yes, we did.
Who, the kid?
No, the mother.
Oh.
Remember, she stayed. Didn't I tell you she stayed in this very fancy Airbnb?
Where is it?
I forget the name of it. It's in Cambridge.
Okay.
It's in Cambridge.
All right. Well, that takes care of that.
So there you go. So
okay,
she's
fine.
a friend of mine from college. So there you go, Jim.
Okay.
I know you have many friends from college.
I do. Do you want me to list them right now? I will.
That was fast.
I know what I can do. Let me list my friends from law school now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Back in Brighton. I really appreciate that very much.
Shauna from Randall. Do you have any friends, Shauna?
That is horrible. That is really crude and crass. Go ahead, Shauna.
Maybe you could rent them for the day.
Go ahead.
Yes, I do have friends.
That's good.
Sorry, I'm in the car, so it's a little noisy.
It's okay.
I have some friends. I am based in Randolph, but I'm a transplant in Massachusetts.
Oh.
And a friend of mine in Rentham actually told me about this idea. We've been doing it the last few months called Wednesday Waffle, where every Wednesday we send each other like a 2-minute video update, like over text.
I love
and it's
that.
really fun. It's like just as you go about your day, whenever you have time, give like a quick update about all the mundane things that are going on. So it doesn't have to be big stuff. It can just be, oh, I have a doctor's appointment today. I'm on my way right now, and here's my update, and here's what I'm looking forward to this weekend.
And do you force yourself to do it every week?
Yeah, I've really had to get over the not wearing makeup, like
I think it's
laying
great.
in bed.
How many people do it? How many people in the group who do it, Shauna?
So I just do it with her, though I have a couple of other friends. I'm originally from Florida, so I do it with a couple of friends from Florida.
That's great.
And she has a big friend group that she does it with, and they have a big group chat where they, everyone gets their waffles in every Wednesday.
I think that's a fabulous idea. I love that.
That is a fabulous idea. You know what else is a fabulous idea? Book clubs. I mean, I used to be in a book club. That was great.
Why aren't you in a book club now?
I don't know. I just kind of get out of the
It's such a fabulous idea. Why aren't you in it?
That's a good question. But I was in one for a long time. You know, it's always a little fisticuffs over what the book you're going to read as people argue about the book. And then you don't want to read a book you don't like, and then you feel resentful of the other.
Can I tell you something? One of the problems with you, because you are a friend of mine, is you start things that the listeners pick up on that are not helpful. For example, an anonymous texter says, Jim, are you still friends with Heidi Heidelman? The answer is no, I'm not.
It was not.
Because her name was Harriet Heinemann. Exactly. And I'm not friendly with her either.
She was a shot putter.
No, she was not a shot putter. That's another rumor you start. She was not a shot putter, and she actually wasn't even in the Olympics. Are you still friendly with Paul Weiss?
No, he does not exist.
He's moved on to other things? No, he did exist.
Well, no, it was a Paul and a Weiss.
Oh, he did. They
two different people, and
exactly.
They're both dead. But that was one of the first law firms that knuckled under to Donald Trump, and it was very disappointing.
Want to hear something incredible that has nothing to do with our discussion?
What?
One of the lawyers, his name is Burke, who represented Paul Weiss in their dealings with the Trump administration that ended up in a capitulation, is now whose lawyer?
Harvard University.
Harvard's, who is not capitulating.
And
which
the
is not
other
capitulating.
one is Robert Hur, H-U-R. He's the guy that did the
Special
interview
counsel.
with Donald Trump. With
Joe Biden.
And called Biden an elderly man with a poor memory. Biden's speaking today somewhere.
Those are the two lawyers for Harvard.
Yeah.
Which is pretty, that's not to criticize Harvard for a change. They obviously want people who have it in with the Trump administration.
I think it's good because they know the machinations of the Trump administration, so it's probably a good thing for them.
You know, Paul Weiss, and there was two people, Jamie writes a moving little note to us. They're both dead. They lived long, and then they died suddenly.
That's right.
That
right.
was actually.
They did. It was very sad.
Okay, let's go to
Emily in Watertown. Thank you for calling.
Hello, Emily. We're talking about friendships.
Hi, yes, I know. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Oh, we love that. Thank you. So are we.
Yes. So I have a group of 10 girlfriends, and we have 3 traditions that have kept us close over at least 20 years.
Wow.
One is that we take a trip together every MLK weekend. We go to the Cape, and it's like locked in, so nobody can get out of that. The other is that we have girls' night in monthly, so it's not as expensive, and we just take turns hosting, and whoever can come comes. And we just get to connect in our own home. And then we finally decided we keep a spreadsheet with all of our vitals, like our kids' names and ages, our birthdays, like what our diseases are, what kind of pills we take. And we also plan out bigger trips on that spreadsheet. But it's good to, you can't remember it all, but it's good to know. It's a good reference.
No,
Emily, what percentage of your friends, you say, every year it's planned to go to the Cape on Martin Luther King weekend. What percentage of your friends in that group end up showing every year?
100%. Well, I would say 90 because we have one friend who lives in Pasadena, but she's made it twice. So
that is great.
Pretty good.
So when you have the girls' night in, Emily, does this
Marjorie's
mean,
writing this down.
I'm writing it down. So one of the women will say, "Is it my house this month, or is it how often is it, and how does it work?"
It's more spontaneous than you think. Like the harder we try to plan it, if we plan too hard, it won't work. But if someone just says, like I said, anyone want to come over this Friday? I think we could use some company. Every single person said yes.
Wow.
And everyone just brings a little bit of food. We all bring our own little wine.
Wow. And this is 10. And this is 10 women. That's pretty impressive.
It is.
Are these women from college, did you say, or high school, or are they just neighbors, or what?
From all over. Like some of them are parents of kids that were my kids' friends. One's my sister. Some of them are friends I met through like a husband long ago, and a couple are ones I met working at Bread and Circus many years ago.
Those are fabulous ideas. Bread and Circus became Whole Foods, for those who don't know. Emily, that was a fabulous call with great ideas. Thank you. Now, someone who purports to be Harriet Heinemann has sent 2 texts. Jim, you haven't called me in years. That is correct. It's going to be many more years before I do call you. And then I think Harriet Heinemann is addressing this text to you.
Yeah.
Why is it okay to make fun of shot putters?
Okay. I just wasn't making fun of shot putters.
It's like a body
I just wanted to say that you said she was in the Olympics.
I did not say. You said she was in the Olympics. One, I didn't say she was in the Olympics. And two, I didn't say she was a shot putter.
Okay.
Okay, what?
I think she was a shot putter,
She was
Jim,
not
but
a
it's
shot
okay.
putter.
Nothing wrong
She
with
was
that.
not a shot
Nothing wrong with
putter.
that.
Okay, fine. Nothing wrong with that.
Brad in San Francisco.
Oh, here she goes.
In San Francisco.
She's about to, a fit of laughter
Hi,
is on
no,
the horizon.
I'm not. I'm controlling myself.
Okay, Brad.
Hi, Brad.
What's your deal, Brad?
Hi.
Hi.
I have 3 strategies for groups of friends,
please,
best friends, and old friends.
Oh.
So I have 9 friends that I've had since the 1980s.
Wow.
7 live in the Bay Area where I live. 1 moved to Seattle and 1 moved to Michigan. We used to do it twice a year. We now do it 4 times a year.
Wow.
And if somebody can't make it, we still meet. But we often try to time it for when the guy from Seattle or the guy from Michigan's in town. And it is so much fun. We've known each other for almost 50 years.
What do you do?
We go to dinner in one of the better restaurants in North Beach. Just go have cocktails for a while, then move on to dinner.
I think that is spectacular. How great! And my sense is
what we did when we were younger.
What's that again?
We remind ourselves of things we did when we were younger.
I bet you do.
Fun thing.
Yeah.
But also, the way I can sort of hear in your voice, I'm sure I'm right about this. Not only is the getting together great, the anticipation of the getting together is probably great once a date's set. Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Then I have a best friend. We were roommates in 1974 when he was in law school, and I moved out here. And he and I get together once a week now to watch movies or sports. He has a big screen TV. We order Japanese food.
Oh my
His
God.
son is with us part of the time. His wife is with us part of the time. And I'm going there tonight to watch the Warriors play-in game.
That is the playing game to decide if they make it into the playoffs. All those things are spectacular and really grown up. Brad, thanks for sharing that with us from San Francisco.
That just reminded me,
Boy.
and I probably shouldn't say his name because...
Go ahead, say his name.
No, I shouldn't.
Who is it?
But he's a columnist for the Globe.
Say his name.
I'm not.
Who is he?
But I know he has a get-together
Which one?
with fire pits and heaters in the backyard. I don't know if it's once a week or once every 2 weeks.
Who is it?
I'm not. I'll tell
Well,
you
say
later.
it. I'm not invited to that. So say who it is.
Neither am I.
Say one of his
But he has
names.
a bunch of buddies over and people that
He's a
are
columnist?
people that are into, I think his mailman goes.
Billy
people that
Baker?
people that do work around his house go.
Jamie guessed that.
Some older guys go that have been at the Globe for a
Who
long
is it?
time. I'll tell you later.
Do you want to
Jim.
know who it is out here in the library?
Yeah, nobody
Every
wants to,
one of them wants to know.
One
guy raised his hand.
I'll call him
Thank
up
you.
and ask him permission if I
Who
can
is he?
reveal it. I shouldn't say
Say it backwards.
Would you stop it?
I'm just curious.
Who is
shut
it?
up, man.
Listen, yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
Was
Who
that?
said
Oh, that was Joe Biden.
That was Joe Biden
I
saying,
love
"Will
Joe
you
Biden.
shut up, man? We should
Can I
get
ask
him
you a
on the show."
question?
Yes.
Are you invited to?
No, I'm not. I just heard about it.
Wow.
And it sounds like it's really coming.
Listen to
kinda
this
neat.
one.
And
Read
they
Kelly-
started it in the backyard because of the pandemic.
Really? Who is
yes.
it?
Okay,
Can you
Jim.
read Kelly in Rhode Island's text?
Lifelong friends are saving grace. My friend of 40 plus years and I are coming up from Providence to the Boston Public Library tomorrow for a birthday outing. We've got our tickets. Ha ha ha. You don't need any tickets. Well, Kelly in Rhode Island will have to give a big hello to you because that's pretty cool.
Now this
Emma in Hudson.
Yeah, quickly, Emma, because this is great. Go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yep, perfectly. Go ahead.
Okay. So during the pandemic, my friends and I would get together virtually, just over text. We would always start the movie at the exact same time, and we only watch bad movies. And we just sort of make fun of it, talk to each other, and it's so easy to set it up. Now that the pandemic's over, we do it in person sometimes, but it's been going strong for 5 years.
That's a great idea.
That's another great
That's
one.
a great idea. I've done something similar. It's not as much fun as watching movies, but with political debates, you have your friends
Why
on
is
the
it not
text
fun
messages.
watching movies? That's great.
Movies is fun.
Oh.
I remember having the horrified text
Thanks,
back
Emma.
and forth when the Joe Biden debate in June.
Didn't go that well.
No, we were texting back
No.
and forth and beside ourselves over that one.
Yeah.
But I've done that a lot in political things. Have you?
Have I?
Yes.
No, I try not
Okay.
to talk to anybody.
All right, you're trying to talk to
Okay,
anybody.
now, Jared, do you stay in touch with friends? I don't have any friends from college or law school, which unfortunately probably reflects on me. Do you have any friends from days gone by?
I do, actually. I have friends from the first grade and
No.
the fifth grade. I just saw my friend in California from the fifth grade a couple weeks ago, a
Wow.
month ago.
Oh, my
Wow.
God.
Yeah, it's pretty special to have those
That
long.
is.
I mean, it feels completely different when you're with those friends because they know everything about you. You know everything
right.
about them. You
Which
can
is
be
why I don't have
totally
any friends
free.
from high school or college or
You don't
law
have to
school,
try
yeah.
to fool them or impress them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They know everything about your family, so you can just dive into. I mean, they know everything. It's great.
Yeah.
Do they know know you have absolutely nothing in your refrigerator, or you keep that from them?
Of course they know that.
Of course they do. What are you doing on the show today?
We're talking to Amari Parrish Jeffries about the 1965 Freedom Rally, because, of course, this is the 60th anniversary of the Martin Luther King Jr.-led rally from Roxbury to Boston Common. It's going to be commemorated, an event coming up. We'll talk about that. Jeremy Siegel is here with lessons from Tokyo. As you know, I was there last summer. He was just there looking at transit and what we could possibly adapt here in Massachusetts. And then Joyce Kulhawick is here talking stage and screen from Shucked to The Pit. The show
it was
that
great.
Everybody's talking about.
GBH sent Jeremy to Japan. They will not send us to Somerville. Before you go away, I had something to say to you, and I forgot what it was. Nice to see you,
He has friends from 5th grade.
I heard you.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive,
That is
Jared.
right. First grade, he said, too.
First grade, that's right.
Jared, we'll be listening this afternoon. Oh, by the way, I know what it was. Tell Amari Parrish Jeffries that, I don't know if you can see this, I am holding up Flower Boston Common, open today at 11. And one of the new things they have, besides a hot dog, soft serve, is an Embrace morning muffin that is in the shape of the Embrace statue. So make sure if he doesn't know, let him know. And it tastes insane.
I will.
Good to see you, Jared.
Thank you very much,
Bye.
Jared. Thanks for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thank you to people that came down here
Thank
to the
you all
Boston
for
Public
coming.
Library.
Appreciate
Very
it.
much appreciate you coming to the library. You can keep up with us 24/7 way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're going to be back here live at the Boston Public Library. The NAACP's Michael Curry, Harvard national security expert Juliet Kahn. Can't wait to talk to her about the Harvard situation. Milk Street Kitchens, Christopher Kimball has got this amazing Italian cookbook. And Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Additional support from Tamsin Vidal. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Thanks to the BPL staff, Angelica Marrero, Bill Francis, Patrick Lally, Juan Jose Cadena. Thanks too to our hosts at the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. The Culture Show with Jared Bowen, you just heard him. It starts immediately after us here on 89.7 GBH.
I know it's only day 2 of the music. Do you not feel when you hear it that you're on the wrong show?
I do. It's an out-of-body experience.
It is an
I'm trying to get used to it.
No, it's fine.
Maybe by Christmas.
It's really good.
Okay.
I'm Jim Browdy.
I'm Marjorie Egan.
See you
Thanks for
tomorrow.
tuning in. It still is our show, even though it doesn't sound like it. And we appreciate your tuning in anyway.
Bye.
See you later.
And another big thanks to Ruth in Providence, who says, good for the spirit during these challenging times. Ruth cannot argue with that. And Ruth actually did get in on the Eton Emergency Radio here. An excellent choice. You could be like Ruth, and you can get in on the Eton too, but you got to get that call started again, 888-995-9272, or go online, classical.org.
Support for WCRB comes from you. And Celebrity Series of Boston. Pianist Yevgeny Kissin returns for his 12th Celebrity Series concert with a program including works by Bach, Chopin, and Shostakovich. Tuesday, April 29th at 8 at Symphony Hall. Tickets and information at celebrityseries.org.
And the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism, commemorating 250 years of history, independence, and innovation since the American Revolution. Learn more